Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Are you guys ready for the interview with the man, Jim Buck?
I'm here. If people hear me.
Hopefully. Is he loud enough, chat? Let us know. Does he sound good? Is he loud enough?
Yeah. I guess we gotta wait for the lag to go by. Do we know how long the lag is on each of the platforms?
It's usually about like 5 to 10 seconds. It's not too bad.
Okay.
We can hear Mr. Buck.
The
Yo, what
buck
up,
that
Lord?
bucks. I see that on Twitch. Nice.
Cryptus, he's reading chat, guys. Come on, be
Yeah.
civilized.
Oh, I have as good of a potty mouth as the best of them, so
That's good.
I'm from New York. So
Oh yeah. Music can be toned down. How about that? Is the music better now, guys? You always like to get these kinks out of the way right away because you don't want to, damper the experience.
what music are you playing?
It's just like lo-fi, like background music, to be honest. It's
Oh,
nothing,
okay.
yeah, nothing crazy.
Cool.
I turned it down a little bit. How's that? Is that better? Mr. Buck
Say
the
fuck
legend.
right now, Mr. Buck. Nice. He'll hear it 10 seconds from now.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
What part of New York, Lord's wondering?
Just outside of Albany. It's also where I went to college, was SUNY Albany.
There we go. Corey, oh my God. I'm not gonna just say
Oh, wait.
so Buck is aware.
I know Corey. This is
you know Corey?
former coworker of mine. Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, he just gifted $100 in chat.
Wow.
Massive.
Oh my God.
Thank you,
awesome.
My guy. Oh my God. Corey, I don't know you, but if you're a friend of Buck, you're a friend of mine.
Yeah, he's definitely good peeps. Yeah, he's referring to the flower power story that I told him, and I think it's probably one of his all-time favorite stories about me. I think you guys know it, but in case the question comes up, I'll divulge the story there.
Right. Well, definitely keep that in mind because I don't think I have. Well, actually, you know what? Do I have that as a question? If I don't, you can just tell it right now because I don't think I do have that as a question because I am curious to hear about this story.
Okay, and for anybody, like, I'm glad I caught Corey's message. I just happened to be looking at that chat stream, but I might miss a lot of chats just from chatting or looking at the other stream.
Yeah.
So the story, Flower Power, Twisted Metal 3. So my office was right next to the office of the artist that created all the paintings that were used for the character profiles on when you select your character. And so Flower Power was interesting. I think he got that from like a Sears catalog or something. He got like the head of some model and then merged it with the body of somebody else. But the way he painted it, I can see like you could see up the skirt.
Oh, okay.
And when we had the image in the game for selecting the character, it's like it was just like, two blurry ass pixels, right? But he had a full blown. I mean, his painting had to have been like 2.5 feet by 1.5 feet. Like, it was pretty good size and it was pretty detailed. I'm like, it'd be great as if like we could zoom in on the money spot there. And I'm like, I could definitely put in some kind of code that you pop in that will show that image.
Sure.
So I did that. So we did a much higher resolution scan of just that one area, and then I implemented a code to bring that up. So yeah, for people that know that code and are wondering like, who's the sick fuck that thought of that, this is that sick fuck.
The legend himself. That's right.
Yes.
Oh my God. Sony allowed it, but yet no blood. Yeah.
I don't know if they knew about it. Like, I don't think legal would have been. I mean, there's no way that they knew about that. They would not have wrote that off.
I was
Now
gonna
that
say,
I think about it,
yeah.
They kind of had to know about it, but there's no way they would have approved that. So I'm guessing we didn't tell them that one. So yeah, because yeah, I think it was years later. Was what was the incident in GTA Coffee Cup or whatever it was called incident?
Oh, you're talking about the hot coffee. Yeah.
Hot coffee. That was it. Yeah.
Yep.
So that was a thing, but that was a thing. Like, I think years after the panty shot for Flower Power, or
yeah.
Imagine
if Twisted Metal 3 was the first hot coffee incident.
I mean, I guess it might I'm sure there's games that have had hidden shit before that though, but I would like to claim I was the first.
That I mean, I'll say it. You know, I'm fine with that title.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
totally. Well, this is a good start.
This is a very good start. Yes, I like this
Yeah,
topic already.
yeah,
Really quick, Cryptus, he gifted some biddies and said, Jim, Twist Metal 3 was the sole reason that I got into content creation and speedrunning. No
nice.
matter what
Okay.
anyone says, the code you put down became my earliest memories and still top, and still top my favorite games of all time. No matter what
Hmm.
anyone says, you created something that means the world to me.
Oh wow. All right. I would never imagine that 20, well, in case just about 27 years later, I would be hearing such awesome words about that.
It's got to be surreal, and and I, I have a couple questions about that later on in the stream.
Hmm. Yeah.
About the resurgence and stuff, but yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later. One last thing before we get too much into it, I see generic white mail says I'm a little quiet. Am I quiet to everybody in the chat? Just want to make sure audio is all good before we get into the nitty gritty because I don't want to, make the experience not fun for everyone to watch. All
Yeah.
right. And again, Corey, you're a legend. Thank you so much for that dono. Appreciate you, homie.
Oh, I saw his message about my Jerome Bettis story. Should I go for a not twisted metal, but while I was employed by Sony working on Kart World Series story?
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. So our office was where also game day was being worked on, and we had the motion capture studio also in the same office. They took our break room, they converted into a motion capture studio, and this was the point in Kart World Series where I was going in on weekends.
Okay.
Weekends was when they were doing all the motion capture. This particular weekend I was in, they had like actual football players there doing the motion capture for game day. Bunch of big guys. I don't know these guys. I don't follow sports or anything like that.
Sure.
So I'm just kind of toiling away on Kart World Series in my office. And then actually the artist that did all the TM3 paintings, he also was kind of working on the weekend as well. Um, so I'm just sitting there programming away. This big black guy just sort of pokes his head into my office, like, "Hey, what are you doing in here?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just working. Hi, I don't know. Are you with motion capture crew or something?" So he's like, "Yeah, can I come and sit down and watch what you're working on there? Or can I play what you're working on?" I'm like, "Sure." I just had this pretty crappy couch at my office. He just kind of sits on it, but he's a big, heavy set guy, so he kind of pushes the couch down pretty far and everything. So I hand him my controller, and while I'm just sort of debugging and testing some stuff, I have him run some laps in Kart World Series and all that.
Yeah.
So finally, like I should probably introduce myself. I'm like, "So hi, what is your name?" He's like, "Oh, I'm Jerome Bettis." I'm like, "Oh, hi Jerome. I'm Jim Buck. How you doing?" Like I have no idea who Jerome Bettis is, but
Yeah. Yeah.
to anybody that follows football, they're like probably screaming at their computer monitor right now. They're like, "Dude, this Jerome Bettis." So I just thought I'm introducing myself to some random
Yeah. Random dude.
crew that's helping out with the motion capture stuff. And then Darren, the other guy that was on the team that did all those paintings on Twisted Metal 3, like he's big time into sports. He's just kind of toiling around. He poked his head into my office. Hey Jim, hey, what up? Jerome Bettis. Jerome Bettis. Wait right here. I have your T-shirt in my office. I'm gonna have you sign it. Like he
No
had
way.
Jerome Bettis' T-shirt in the office and everything. So like here comes Darren with the T-shirt, and he's just gushing over the fact that Jerome Bettis is in the office here.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's happening. I'm like, who's this guy? I don't know what the hell. I mean, like I don't know if it were Joe Namath or something. Then okay, now I know what we're talking about. But
Yeah.
90s, rising football star at that time. Like I have no idea. So yeah, that's my Jerome Bettis story.
That's it's fun. You think about it. I think I've seen like there was some research on the or probably a theory or whatever. But I remember hearing about everybody in their life has ran into at least like 10 famous people without even knowing it. And I feel like that's probably true. You think of how big content creation is nowadays, of course.
Yeah.
And in sports and stuff, people age, and I myself only follow like my team, the Vikings in the NFL. I don't really follow anybody else, so I wouldn't have known who that guy is either. But you know, it's funny because people, you know, obviously know who he is. He's huge, and they're just like, "What the heck? What? You're not excited? You're not happy to meet this guy?" But it's if you don't know him, I mean, it's not your fault. That's awesome.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Now I assume there's a version of this story on Jerome's side where he talks to his family members like, yeah, that one time I did some work for Sony doing motion capture.
Yeah.
I went to this dumbass's office who had no idea who the hell I was. There's some insulting to me probably version of this story elsewhere.
Oh my god. Oh, sorry. Johnny is asking why wasn't Twister in Twist Metal 3 with a $2 donation. Thank you, buddy.
Oh, so on the Twisted Metal games, I knew that this was going to be a pretty big creative endeavor, and I kind of sort of put in my own mind, I'm not going to involve myself too much with the creative side of things, gameplay choices, character choices, story choices, and like, I just need to focus on the tech because there's already enough work on that. Never mind all the creative arguments that I knew we'd get into. No, it should be this character. No, it should be this character. Like my favorite was Crimson Fury. It never showed up in any of the games I worked on, but I wasn't going to go to, battle for getting that in there. I don't know why Twister specifically. I know we wanted a balance of bringing in some of the old characters, but also creating some of the new. I mean, first off, we had artists on the team that were not part of the first two games.
Sure.
Our artists
Yeah.
want to do cool new stuff. They want to flex their own creative muscles.
Yep.
They don't want to just like copy somebody else's stuff. They want to be able to have their own mark. So there definitely was some amount of, well, we definitely want to have some original characters. We want to have
Yeah.
some kind of creative juices flowing into this game. So I don't know why certain characters were chosen over others. I mean, obvious ones like, all right, we're going to have Sweet Tooth, of course.
Yeah.
That's like I know
Yeah.
Sherlock. But after that, I don't know what the logic was behind the choices.
This is a quick question, I guess, from me. It's actually not even on my list, but just thinking about this, do you know why Sweet Tooth was put behind a cheat code in TM3? I know they did it in TM2 as well, but I'm wondering, was that just a copy TM2's pace there, or was it just, just for shits, I guess, or?
I'm gonna guess it was my fault. The physics worked well with cars that were not very large.
Yeah.
Cars were sometimes getting caught on corners of geometry, but if the cars had a very large box, I think it was much more easily happening. So anything excessively large, we would hide either behind a code or like you guys now have hacked versions out there that have
Yeah.
um, some of our riskier like Moon Buggy. Like I guess you could play as Moon Buggy now in the hack version. It's like no way we're gonna have Moon Buggy is a super long car. There's no way we're gonna let the player control that in some kind of reality
Sure.
of codes or whatever. So yeah, it was probably more the physics, what the limitations were.
That makes sense. And I've heard it time and time again over the years. A lot of people hate Sweet Tooth in TM3 because he flips over a lot. So I can understand
Yep.
a million times where it's like, yeah, he's the poster child, but because we don't have the time, to perfect the physics of his vehicle specifically, we're just gonna put him behind some type of wall where he is playable, but you're gonna have to go out of your way to get him playable so that it doesn't make us look bad, or some way, shape, or form. So I get that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy, man. All right. Well, let's get into the questions I have here, and I'll let the chat know as well. So I have a list of questions we're going to go through with Jim, and then I told him that we kind of open up the floor at that point to have you guys ask questions, and he said he was going to scour through and look for what he wants to answer. And of course, if we do have really generous people that have super chats throughout the stream, I will ask those, of course, as we go, just so we don't lose them in the craziness that's going on. So thank you all for being patient and understanding of this new format. And speaking of that, Madman Rio, thank you for the $2 super chat. Why wasn't Darkseid playable in TM3? That's actually a really good question. Yeah, Darkseid.
I mean, I think it's the same reason. I mean, Darkseid in particular is excessively long. It's not even just big; it's just that he's long. So if you try to take Darkseid around a corner, like his back points would probably get caught on geometry if you're going like tightly around a building or some kind of geometry.
Yeah.
He probably was the riskiest character in this respect because I have a video on my YouTube channel about how I implemented the physics for Rallycross, and it's basically the same physics for Twisted Metal 3 and 4. I didn't do solid body physics. So each of these sort of collision boxes is modeled as each individual 8-point masses that are just sort of connected to each other by springs.
Sure.
So I would only collide the point against the world. So if you were trying to go around the corner of something, like, and the middle of the car could totally penetrate that geometry. And then when that back point would come around, it would get caught up on the geometry.
Mm.
Like if I did a version now with solid body physics, that would totally not happen. It would scrape up against that geometry, and it wouldn't matter the size of the object in that case. But because I was doing point mass based physics, it totally mattered like how big the thing was.
It's
So
it's
that's why in this
interesting.
case.
Yeah, and that's interesting to me because we, like you said, we have mods now that have playable dark side and primeval,
Yeah.
and you can use Game Shark codes to unlock them as well. So that they were like fully modeled and playable in the game. They
Hmm.
were just hidden,
Yeah.
and it's interesting to me because out of all the years I've played Twist Metal 3 with dark side and primeval messing around, I
Hmm.
personally, and again, this might just be somebody not paying attention, I guess, just having fun. I
Hmm.
never had issues with Darkseid running into walls as much, or like, like you're saying, having collision issues with cars. But I can definitely see it from someone who may be obviously looking for that stuff as the developer.
Meaning the testers.
Right, the testers as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys are
Yeah.
gonna notice that stuff and be like, we don't want people to see that. Whereas a
Yeah.
dummy like me who's just playing for fun, it's one of those questions where I was always like, why was this never implemented? It runs great. So that makes
Yeah,
more
I mean,
sense now.
if you're just playing the game, you're driving like you would drive a real car. You're going to try not to scrape up against that building, so you won't hit that issue. But yeah, testers are all about trying to break the game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that will open up these. Oh crap! We didn't think about that. Yeah, that would be a result of having a long vehicle going around the corner trying to hit it. Yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, probably in regular gameplay circumstances, this won't actually come up. But yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And Cryptus, he's saying non-twisted metal question. Those axes look like they shred very hard. Do you have a favorite guitar in your collection?
Ah, um, probably this pink one, because this is the one that I use. Or actually, I'm reverse, aren't I? So this pink one, I think it's the one. It's the one I use the most. So I'm a musician. I do a lot of gigging. Almost every week I have a gig. So this pink one has special hardware attached to it that I have a separate board that can do synth sounds. So there's a switch on the guitar that I can switch from just playing regular guitar sounds through one pedal board and route it through the second pedal board that like, oh, this song has harmonic on it. Okay, here's Jim playing the harmonica on the guitar or piano or organ or even like random sound effects like wind or spaceship or gun or whatever.
Cool.
Whatever you can think of. There's like 900 or something different sounds on this particular synth board, and you can combine it in all sorts of different ways. Um, so I guess that one is technically my favorite because it's the one I have to use the most, and it kind of looks the most metal looking.
Yeah.
Hot pink with the sort of animal striped guitar strap on it. So yeah,
It goes hard. It definitely does.
totally, yeah.
I
And I'm a
dig it.
big Ibanez fan. Half the guitars I own are Ibanez.
Sick.
So fanboy.
And quick shout out for Jim as well. If you guys want to check out his YouTube channel, exclamation Jim in the chat will put a link to his YouTube. Go give him a sub, please.
Oh,
I think
cool.
you
Yeah,
posted some gigs there, haven't you?
a few. I have a lot of unlisted stuff I should probably make public. Yeah, I have a handful of gigs there. I have some. I have the Rallycross talk I gave. I have another talk I gave on code reviews while I was at Amazon Games.
Yeah.
There might even be some early videos of one of my kids when she was like 2 years old. Yeah, I should probably tend to that channel a little bit more than I am currently. But yeah, there's probably some cool, fun stuff depending on what you're into watching. But for this crew, probably the Rallycross talk would be interesting if you haven't already seen it.
Yes, it's very interesting, by the way. You guys should definitely check it out.
Yeah, I talk about the Rallycross physics, but then I talk about briefly changes I made to that base physics for Kart World Series, and then Twisted Metal 3, and then Twisted Metal 4. And if any of you are, like into guitar or whatever stuff, yeah, there's a handful of videos of, like when I first started getting back into guitar, like in 2018, 2019, some pretty cringy stuff back then, and some less cringy stuff that is more recent.
I gotcha. And
Yeah.
oh, sorry, I was just reading. Red Eye fans with a
Oh, yeah.
relatively low action with a feel that I should try. Okay.
Oh, one of my band members is on the stream.
Oh, are they?
Yeah,
Who is
Jordan
it?
Alberto. Yeah,
Shout him out.
Jordan Alberto. Yeah, he's a bassist in Endoraptors.
Welcome in, Jordan. Heck yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah,
We love seeing all of Jim's friends in here too.
yeah.
Let's see. All right, so let's see. So the first question I had here is actually just what got you into making video games? What got you into wanting to be a developer?
I mean, I've been playing video games since in the '70s on Atari 2600, and then in like fourth or fifth grade, I was learning how to do basic programming on a Commodore PET at school. They had like a Pac-Man clone on there, so I was sort of seeing the source code of to see how that worked. And then later, my mom got me a TI-99 4A Texas Instruments home computer. Started messing around with learning BASIC and extended BASIC on that. I would get magazines and books that had listings on them. This was before I had a way of saving anything, so I would just spend hours typing in the code listing, figuring out how to make changes to do different cool things. And then when I would turn off the computer, I would lose it all. Eventually, I would get a cassette to save to, like back
Yeah.
when you could save the cassette and it would sound similar to like if anybody on this stream used to use modem to connect to the internet in the day, that screeching sound.
God, dial up.
That's what this. Yeah, exactly. That's what this computer sounded like when it was dumping to cassette tape, and then later I got a floppy drive for it.
Yeah.
I learned how to do some programming in elementary school and junior high school, and then I didn't touch it again for many years. And then I went to college to get a bachelor's in math, and then around my junior year, I started to look at like, well, shit, I only got a couple more years here. What am I going to do with this math degree? And I'm sort of looking around at what people are doing with the math degree, and like you either become an elementary school teacher or you get into this weird esoteric R&D. Like you have to be kind of high to understand these very weird math concepts. And I'm like, I'm not cut out for either of those things. Oh shit. Well, what's the computer science department doing? Maybe I get a minor in computer science and can do something with that. So I did a minor in computer science. I'm like, actually, this is cool. I'm surprised I didn't do programming nonstop all those years. It's kind of weird I got out of it. So I stayed to get my master's in computer science. And then once I was done, I'm like, all right, I'm interested in video games because I was just still playing video games all the time with my friends, Super Nintendo and then PlayStation when that came out. But I also have a love for movies and special effects. ILM was, still fairly newish at the time, but some of that was done with computers. So I was applying to like both types of companies. And I'm like, whichever industry sort of accepts me first is where I go.
Yeah.
And that ended up being Sony PlayStation office here in San Diego. So that's kind of what got me into that. But at the time, it was pretty scary because I hadn't really worked on games before. But here I am working on a platform I didn't understand. I didn't know what it was like programming for a console, and you're programming to that hardware, and also learning how do you generally develop a game, what is an update loop and all that stuff, and I was hired to do physics. How do I do that? I don't know. They hired me because they saw I was in AP physics in elementary school, or in high school, sorry.
Yeah.
Never mind, that was 6 years prior because I went through a bachelor's and master's degree program.
Yeah.
So they're like, all right, math, physics, you're the guy.
That's all it takes.
So that was like throwing me into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
Thankfully, like initially I was hired to replace a guy that was doing the physics, who crazy enough has an ex-wife that lives literally across the street from us. And I still haven't told her that, like,
whoa,
I replaced your husband almost 30 years ago. I got to tell her about that.
That's awesome.
So I was working with his code, and his code was this very fake 3D physics, but I was using his code as a means of learning how to make a game, how to do an update loop, how to develop on PlayStation, how to develop debug code. And I got to the point like, all right, I understand this well enough, but I have to throw this out. But what can I do? So I thought back into, I talk about this in my Rallycross talk, but I thought back to my master's degree. I was doing a master's thesis using OpenGL back when it was 1.0 on Silicon graphics machines. That was the only platform it was on at the time. But Silicon graphics created these cool demos to showcase this brand new graphics API. And I thought back to that time. All right, there was this one cool demo where you choose this arbitrary shape, like a sphere-like shape, or a pyramid shape, or a cube shape, and you can sort of with the mouse pick it up, put it in the air, and then like have the angle of the room that you're about to drop it in some arbitrary angle, and it would bounce around the room and come to a rest. I'm like, if I know how that is done, I can develop this into Rallycross. Like I can sort of see how I can take that technology and make a driving thing out of it.
Sure.
So I tracked down, not I normally on Unix machines, source code lives on the machine. We actually had artists at Sony that had Silicon graphics machines for their art. Unfortunately, none of the artists had source code of apps on their machine, but I did track down somebody on the internet that had a similar demo, and he was totally willing to give me his source code. I still remember his name, Robert Sheehan. Wherever you are, Robert Sheehan. I remember
Maybe he's
you.
here.
Maybe.
Never know.
I think I might even still have the email I exchanged with him. Kind of weird. So yeah, I got his code and I figured out what he was doing. It was just basically having these point masses that were all connected by springs. You simulate that, and you just sort of figure out per update loop, all the accumulative forces on those points, and you advance the motion of the point based on that. And once I sort of got that working on the PlayStation, like even the lead programmer who was super skeptical about this, once he saw that working in a PlayStation, he's like, "Oh wow, all right, I have no more concerns about where the direction you're heading in."
Yeah.
But initially, I was like starting to shit bricks because I'm like, "I hope this will work." I'm working on this for a few months now, and we're supposed to ship, within like I don't know 8 months or something. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into games.
That's awesome. I mean, that must have been nerve wracking at the beginning, though, for sure. Especially if it's a brand new format, something you're not really used to, or But sometimes the best way to
Yeah.
learn, I've learned anyway, is to be kind of just thrown into the, like you said, into the sharks, right?
Yeah.
I feel it is one of the best ways to learn things. Sometimes it can be a little bit too much, but I would say you definitely pulled through.
Yeah, totally. I mean, same tech on 4 games, and
Yeah.
here I am dozens of years later talking about it, which is to me still insane.
Well, I think it's awesome. And again, I truly appreciate you being here for this interview because this has been a lot of fun already. And yeah, I think people in chat appreciate you talking about this stuff too. Because I was telling
Totally.
I was telling Jim before we started that like it's really tough to get a hold of a lot of the original developers of these games because a lot of them just
Yeah.
don't, whether they don't have a social media presence or there's just not an open availability to reach out to them or communicate with them. So people
Hmm.
like Jim and Goodrich, it's awesome, and Kevin, it's awesome to be able to hang out with you guys and talk to you guys about these games all these years later because we don't have a lot of availability to do that with a lot of people, sadly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm connected on Facebook to most of the Twisted Metal team members. I would say almost all the Twisted Metal team members, but I think most of them don't even use Facebook anymore. There's a couple that I'm still pretty close friends with, talk with on a
Hmm.
weekly basis, but that's it.
I
Um,
gotcha. Well, it's cool that you're still,
yeah.
yeah, you're still interacting in some way, shape, or form with some of them at least to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
and Facebook's kind of tough because, especially in my line of work right now with content creation and stuff, we have to kind of
Hmm.
stay a little bit anon. We can't really give out our last names and stuff. So Facebook's tough because if I was to join those fan groups or try to talk to those people, it's like, here's my first and last name, and all my family is connected to this account. So it's
Yeah.
a little trickier that way.
Yeah, I'm actually on a couple of the Twisted Metal fan groups. I rarely respond to something, but occasionally when I do, I can remember early on a couple of people were like asking a question, I would answer, and then they're like, "Well, how do you know?" I'm like, "I worked on it. I don't know."
I made that code that you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see. So this one I've actually been very curious about this one. I think you told me a
Mhm.
little bit about it before we started, but were you personally a fan of Twist Metal 1 and 2 before you worked on 3?
So two came out while I was at Sony, but one, yeah, I was playing Twisted Metal one with a buddy of mine all the freaking time. That and Destruction Derby, those were the two
Mm,
games. I had maybe 4 or 5 games, but those two were really the only ones we were ever playing. Yeah, I loved the first Twisted Metal. When Twisted Metal 2 came out, I was already at Sony, probably working on Rallycross at the time, and because I was just So this is sort of the sad reality, at least for me, and I assume maybe at least a number of people that work on games. Once you start working on games, like I think you play a lot less games, you sort of see how the sauce is made. It's less magical, but
Yeah,
also you're just so busy working on them that like when you come home, kind of the last thing you want to do is just fire up the monitor again and play a game.
sure.
So that's the way it was for me. Other than like that was when I was getting heavily into Quake, was at the office, but that was also just sort of playing with you know, developer team members as well, get camaraderie. Um, but yeah, no, not a lot of Twisted Metal play. But
Mm.
when I left Sony to do a startup, that was right when Twisted Metal Black came out, and I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
okay.
I want to see this because you know it's all about it being dark. I'm like, I want to see what dark is because I like dark.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't like the goofiness that Twisted Metal 3 and 4 had either, but that was not my decision. So Twisted Metal Black came out, and I just played the shit out of it. I played through the whole game on every character because I'm like, I want to see the beginning and ending, and I think there were maybe some middle movies if I recall. I don't know,
Yep, there
but I
was
definitely
middles,
want
yeah.
I wanted to play. Yeah, I wanted to play every nook and cranny of that game, so I totally did. I love Black. Black was great, looked great, played great, high frame rate. It was awesome. So yeah, double. You know, I think I even said something to the team at the time when I was exchanging emails with them later, like I love Black. I love Black. Black was great.
That's awesome. That's yeah, that's my
Yeah,
goat as well. I think Black is
yeah,
a huge fan favorite of the community as well, for good
yeah.
reasons. And it's interesting you just said that if it was up to you, like let's just say this is a question I had later, but I'm just gonna ask it now since it flows perfectly with this.
Yeah.
If you were the head honcho making all of the decisions of Twist Metal 3 and 4, would you have made the actual atmosphere of the game darker, like TM Black? Like, because you said you didn't really like the campy goofiness.
Um, quick pause real quick. I just want to give a shout. I
Yeah,
saw
yeah,
my daughter posted hello on the stream. That's Nina's studio. If anybody's into filmmaking, she's a filmmaker. She posts movies that she makes on there in high school. If you want to subscribe to Nina's studio, so just thought give her a shout out. Um, Creatively, I don't know what I would have done. Like, I don't know if it would have been an option to go dark. Like later when I heard Javi's like, I just want to go dark, or we're making a dark thing. I'm like, it didn't even occur to me that that was a direction like we could have gone in.
yeah.
Like, I don't know if Kelly would have approved that. Kelly Flock, the head of Sony at the time. I don't know. I definitely don't like the goofiness. Like I'll say it. I'll do a couple name droppings here in case any of them are listening or do watch this video years from now.
Sure.
Bill Todd and Ken George, they were on the team. Ken was the producer. Bill, he was the lead programmer on Twisted Metal 3, and then he was like a programmer producer on Twisted Metal 4. These guys went to high school together, and then they ended up in the game industry, and then they ended up working in the same studio on the same game. They were very much into goofy things. Uh,
Mm,
Bill Todd's favorite all time movie, and I would love to know if it still is, given all the movies that have been released since then, but at least in the 90s, and we would give him endless shit about this. His favorite movie was Dumb and Dumber.
that's a great pick, though. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, but just to paint the picture,
Yeah,
like if that is your thing,
yeah, yeah,
and now think of the movies of Twisted Metal 3 and 4,
yeah,
are you surprised? You know what I mean? Like if that's
yeah,
where the creative sort of inception is. Like it's not a surprise.
yeah. That makes a lot more sense now, for sure.
Yeah. Whereas, you know, at the time my favorite movie was like Nightmare on Elm Street and like, you know, 80s kind of dark horror movies at the time.
Yeah,
Um like I don't know if I would have gone dark like the way Jaffe did, but I definitely would have wanted like serious. Like I would have wanted legitimate,
sure,
this is what the person wishes, and they're not gonna get fucked over in this goofy ass way, you
sure.
know?
Yeah, yeah. Because definitely
So
3 and
yeah.
4. I mean, they went above and beyond the cheese factor for sure. I think like
Yeah.
most people can agree, even if you're not a huge fan of TM2. I feel most people can agree
Mhm.
TM2 did a really great job of mixing the campy silliness with serious dark elements. I think there was, some characters like Axel, for instance, got a pretty dark ending where he rips his arms out of his vehicle and says screw you to his dad and leaves. And then you got,
Yeah.
characters like Hammerhead, for instance, where they wish to fly they jump off a building and they die because he just gives them plane tickets. So it's like
Hmm.
there's a definite goofiness, but there's also a seriousness to it as well. So I'm with you as
Hmm.
well. I probably would have done the same thing. I would have been more serious with a mix of silly than to have just straight goofball. Yeah, all the way through.
I mean, all that said, I mean, I'll put out there, I'm the least interested in story when it comes to games. I grew up
Mm,
when, you know, Pac-Man was the game. Like Pac-Man was my first love
yeah.
as far as video games go, and Space Invaders. And what's the story with those games? There's no story. I like games that like the game mechanics. It just feels good to move around. Like the audio and the graphics are really cool. Like I don't care if there's just justification, a story justification to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
If what I'm
Yeah.
doing feels fun, I don't care if there's literally no reason for it. Like um, Doom. I mean that's like they made a story out of it, but barely. And
Yeah.
but just
Yeah.
Doom feels fun. Quake feels fun. My all-time PC favorite games is Descent 1 and 2. You're going around the mine shafts killing the robots, miners that went out of control.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit to know that. It's fun to fly around these mines in full-blown 6 degrees of freedom 3D and fire at these robots and blow them up. That just is fun as hell.
Right.
So that's why I also didn't really have a horse in the game when it came to sort of the creative reasoning behind like the stories. Like it
Right.
just there are people that have far more interest in having awesome story and justification, like to the point where the game is secondary for them. For me, the story is secondary or even tertiary, but like for them, like the gameplay is secondary, which I don't understand. They prefer to understand and have the story, like have endless cutscenes with just
Yep.
moments of gameplay. Like
Yep.
that's so not me when it
I
comes to games.
100% agreed. I am the exact same way. It's kind of it's we don't have to go on a tangent about this, but just recently, Kojima's new Death Stranding 2 just came out, and that's a
Mhm.
huge example of like story cutscenes over gameplay. And
Mhm.
I know people love those games and they're worshipped by hundreds of thousands, it feels like, out there, and people are loving the game. And I don't think anyone's
Mhm.
wrong for liking those games or enjoying those kind of games. But for me personally,
Mhm.
it's like I'd rather just watch a movie. If I'm sitting there 80% of the time watching cutscenes anyway, why am
Yeah.
I playing a video game? I feel like I can't really get immersed in this world right now. I have to, I'd rather be playing a game that is 90% gameplay, 10% story than a game that's
Yeah.
90% story, 10% gameplay any day of the week. Like that's just,
Yeah.
yeah. I've never been a fan of those games. But again, if anybody in chat disagrees, I'm not gonna fight you. I think it's cool that everyone has their own tastes. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, and now the quality is to the point where you could tell a compelling story with audio and
Hmm.
real-time rendered graphics and all that stuff. Back
Yeah.
then, even the pre-rendered video like was very bad. Very, very
Yes.
bad.
Oh yeah.
Um,
The FMVs. Right? Is that what they called FMVs back in the day?
yeah, but I mean, even like those Twisted Metal 4 cutscenes, we could do those in
Hmm.
real time for like probably 20 years now,
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
Um, I saw somebody up here had a question. Whose idea was it to get Rob Zombie? Um,
That was Johnny. Yes. Thank you, Johnny.
I don't know. If I had to guess, that was probably Jay Beard, our studio head. Was he listening to Rob Zombie? I mean, there were a few of us that were into the heavier music. I wasn't listening to Rob Zombie at that time, but I was the one that received an early copy of was it Hellbilly Deluxe? Was that the album?
Yes. Yep. That
That
was
might
his.
have been it.
Yep.
So we got shipped a copy before the album was released because we had to rip the songs off it and put it in the game. So I was the one that got that copy. I might still have that disc actually.
Lucky.
So I got a pre-release copy. I mean, I assume it's bit for bit identical to whatever you
Sure.
bought at
Sure.
local CD store. But it was cool to have it.
Yeah.
But I was the one that was responsible for having to rip those songs and get those integrated into the game. So they had to send that to us and specifically send it to me. Um, but I was listening to the shit out of that album. That was an awesome album. I'm like, Rob Zombie, this is great. This is super. Where have you been all my life, Rob?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, he came
Yeah.
out swinging with that album from White Zombie to Rob Zombie, and yeah, that album is still I think it's one of the probably top 3 best metal albums of all time. I stand by that. Um,
Yeah,
let's see.
totally kick-ass.
Oh
Meet the
yeah,
Creeper, all time my favorite song. I would love to. I do musician stuff, and you know, Jordan, if you're still out there, I would love to do like Meet the Creeper cover or
oh
something. That
that'd
would
be
be awesome
sick.
to perform somewhere.
If you do, you got to upload that to your channel because that would go
Totally.
viral.
Yeah. Or
Well,
any other songs. I mean, Twisted Metal 4 had a lot of pretty good bangers.
they did. Yeah,
Yeah.
our community loves the Neon City theme from Cirrus.
Yeah.
That's like the big banger I think most people really love these days. But yeah, Rob Zombie has become just synonymous with Twisted Metal because of TM3 and 4, which is really
Yeah.
cool to say. You know, I love that. Let's see. The next question I had is, what was your most difficult game in your career that you've made so far, and why?
Oh my God. Oh, God, let me look at my twitchythumbs.com webpage, looking for my list of games I've worked on. That's another site of mine. So twitchythumbs.com, that's a company I started in 2005 and it still exists.
Sick.
It could be, I mean, Rallycross, it might have been just because I had to develop everything from scratch and learn the platform I was developing on and get all that math and physics working at like 30 frames per second on a very shitty platform.
Yeah.
Like that was just sort of brain power. That was some hard shit. And also the hours were just insane. Those were like 100+ hour weeks for much of the year on both well, Twisted Metal 3 and 4, but also parts of Rallycross. I had to crunch just to get some of that stuff going. So just sort of technically, probably Rallycross.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look over some of the other games to see if there was anything else that was hard. I don't know if anything would have been hard. Some might have had kind of challenging schedules, but like the work itself wasn't all that hard. Um, Maybe working out like I was at part of the forefront of working on PSP hardware. We were
Oh,
working
okay.
on PSP before we even got hardware. We just had like a Windows API we had to write code to, and then it would theoretically work when hardware came out. But then once we got the hardware, it was all about sort of bringing the rendering performance. So sort of figuring out like the hardware and like how to really write your code so it's getting the squeezing the most performance out of this. I mean, we had to do that in PS1 to an extent, but
Yeah.
um, the team before me, which was ESPN Games, like
Hmm.
they had kind of figured out a lot of that stuff for our studio. Um, so like we kind of didn't really have to work out some of the harder like hardware specific stuff. Some stuff, yeah, but a lot of it was figured out. But PSP, like we were that first team. So that was kind of hard to sort of figure out the best way of doing rendering.
Yeah.
Like all my code was used on all the PSP NBA games. So I was
Oh,
trying to write a shit hot fast renderer that would work for the NBA games.
sure.
So that was pretty challenging, but it was fun. That was super fun problems. I got another one. Just sort of looking at my list of games. So
Yeah.
one of the second project I worked on as Twitchy Thumbs Entertainment was working on Bully Scholarship Edition. We
Oh,
were converting the. Do you know this game?
yeah. Bully. Yeah, it's a huge game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I worked on the conversion of PS2 to Xbox 360, and then I think it also ended up on Windows.
Yep.
Um, so I that was when I had moved to Massachusetts for a few years, and I was working out of what ended up being Rockstar New England. It was called Mad Dog Games at the time.
Hmm.
So I was working on site as a contractor. So we were just given this PS2 code base that was basically the GTA engine,
Yeah.
and it was implemented using renderware, which was Criterion's middleware engine that was used on the Burnout series.
Yep.
I'm not sure what other games it was on, but so these guys were using like renderware all over their code base. But we're like, hey, we're on the Xbox 360. Renderware is not a thing anymore because Criterion got bought by EA, so they're not licensed the engine.
Hmm.
We're going to use Gamebryo. So it's like, all right, I'm going to take this renderware based engine and get it to Gamebryo. I was responsible for like the animation system on there, and Bully. I mean, there
Yeah.
was tons of characters in there, fully animated, a lot of skin-based stuff. Now Gamebryo had skin-based animation, and we had all this data of all these animations that were in this format that was really meant for renderware.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a lot of work, and I don't really have a good path in sight. But I'm like, but if we could sort of keep all the renderware code as is, we could just sort of take the end result of like the matrices that are used for the skinning and just quickly convert it to Gabriel format and just use the Gabriel for rendering it. We can get there. But in order to do that, so we had a Windows version of renderware that we were using at the
Okay.
time to just sort of build the game and sort of see if a reference version on Xbox 360 against reference version running on PS2 or Windows, are the bugs the same? Or like if we see something weird in this version, did it exist in the original? If it did, okay, well, at least the code is faithful. So what I did was I reversed engineered the Windows version of Renderer, at least the parts of it that I was responsible for touching.
Yeah.
So I basically decompiled it into assembly language for x86 CPU architecture, which Windows was running on. And I'm like, all right, and renderer was a C-based library. So I'm like, all right, I have the disassembled version. I can convert this to the C code equivalent. So
Yeah.
I just was wholesale converting assembly language code to C code for whole animation subsystems of renderware. So we would have basically our own custom renderware implementation.
Yeah.
And then stuff got working. But again, like I just had to go on faith for like a month that this was a path of success. And it totally might not have been, but thankfully it did. But it was just such a huge amount of work trying to get assembly language to C code manually.
Right. And I mean, you're going from like previous console generation to next console generation too. So people are kind of expecting like, I know a lot of people, for instance, probably already bought it on PS2, and then they have an Xbox 360, so they went and bought it again for the 360 to see the improvements. So
yeah, I mean, everything was up-resed. I think we were even using Speed Tree to do the trees rather than just the crappy PS2 trees. So at least the graphics, low-level graphics guys were trying to do what they could on that. But yeah, it was just a lot of manual work trying to
for sure
get, this. They were abusing renderware basically. Like it's just like we had no choice but to sort of not touch their code that was using renderware because we would have it would have taken a lot longer, I think, to get working. I'm not even sure if they would have gotten to the finish line when they did, if not for that.
Well, basically, the main takeaway there is that porting games is tougher than creating games from scratch.
It is, in many ways, yeah. But if you can at least do it, then like you'll have identical behaviors. Like,
yeah,
if the car flipped a certain way in the PS1 version of a game, it would also flip us that same way in the Windows version of the game. And it's nice to have that one to one. It exactly behaves the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super cool, and I had no idea that you worked on Bully, even if it was the ported version. But that's honestly that's huge. That's super cool.
Oh, it's cool. I mean, like I said, I worked on the GTA engine.
yeah, that's awesome.
And that team ended up working on the next GTA game, so I kind of wonder if my code ended up in that GTA 4 or 5.
And GTA 4, I've just been playing that recently on stream, so and I love that. It's my favorite GTA, so
I mean, I think they use the Rockstar game engine, but I wonder if they brought over some of the GTA code to the Rockstar game engine, though. I'll never find out. Maybe if I ask some of my former Rockstar New England coworkers, maybe they would know if they're still around.
Yeah, you never know. That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
What game are you personally most proud of making, and why?
I mean, definitely Rallycross, just because I had to figure out everything from scratch, from the ground up. And it's one of those games where, like, if you play that game, everything in that game, as far as feel goes, everything the cars are doing, 100% is my code.
Wow.
Like by comparison, I worked on a racing game we released in 2019 for Amazon Games called the Grand Tour game. I was also on the physics team, but I was one of 8 guys we licensed the physics engine, and I was really just sort of connecting interfaces from the physics engine we were licensing to interfaces in Lumberyard, and
Yeah.
sort of implementing some debug interfaces so that the gameplay engineers could do what they needed to do. I cannot point at one thing on the screen in the final game and say I did that. I worked on the physics for 2 racing games. One, everything about that game is my code, and the other, pretty much nothing about that game is my code.
That's crazy.
Um,
But you're probably like the same title in both games, roughly, for the credits.
yeah. I mean, programmer, software engineer, whatever
Yeah.
it was. Yeah. So it was cool where I can have that much of an effect on a game. So that's why
Right.
Rallycross is definitely my favorite, um, by far.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense. And not only that, but literally because of your work on Rallycross is what converted into Twisted Metal 2, or Twisted Metal 3, I should say,
Mhm.
technically. So, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
How did
Yeah, I
this
see
was
somebody's.
oh sorry, yeah, you go.
You seen the same question seeing there about porting TM3 to
Uh,
TM4? It took a while to hit the PS Store recently. Then, are
um,
they talking about the PS5 versions of the game?
they must be, yeah. Does that mean porting TM3 and 4 took a while to hit the PS Store? Yeah, they're asking about next month when TM3 and 4 hit the PS5 PlayStation Store.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna guess they didn't port it to PS5. I mean, I assume they have a PlayStation 1 emulator on the PS5,
Yep.
and that those games are just taking advantage of that, plus whatever sort of visual upgrades are kind of built into that, like higher resolution
Kind of
geometry, or I don't know.
speaking of those, do you think they're going to keep the music, the copyrighted songs?
Oh,
Because that's what we've
that's
been worrying
interesting.
about as a fan base. We're like, 'cause we think the music is a pretty integral part
Uh,
of TM3 and 4. So we don't know.
did Twisted Metal 3 and 4 end up on earlier platforms? I'm trying to remember. You guys would know more about
No,
that than me. I know,
I want to say this is the first time they've ever been like re-released since their original inception.
so not even on PSP or
I don't
PS Vita.
know. They've always
Um,
released 1 and 2. They've always re-released 1 and 2 for the PSP store. I remember that. It was on the PS3, and then it came to
mhm.
PS5. Same with TM Black as well. It's been re-released on PS4, and then now PS5. So I think 3 and 4. This is the first time that they've actually like recreated it, or they're porting it, whatever, however they're doing it. So we all just assumed as a community, we're like, well, they're not touching 3 and 4, not because of lack of sales back in the day, but we think it's because of the copyright. They don't want to pay the money for the music because they would have to go in and strip the audio, right? I would assume.
So yeah, let me take a side tour as a comparison, and I'll get back to that. So the racing game that I mentioned that I shipped at Amazon Game Studios, the Grand Tour game, it's
Hmm.
based on Amazon's TV series, which is if anybody knows Top Gear, Amazon hired the same guys to basically make the same show for them called the Grand Tour. We
Oh,
made a racing game associated with season 3, and every episode that came out of season 3, a new version of our game came out with content from that episode of the show. Now, that meant we had a shitload of licensed content in the game. So, like, if there was a Ferrari in that episode of the show, we had a Ferrari in the game and all that stuff. So, we had a ton of licensing contracts with all the car manufacturers. Now, I didn't know this, but I didn't find out until, like, I think the game was it was digital download only on Xbox One and PlayStation 4,
okay.
and I think a year later they had to take it down. Why did they have to take it down? Because the contract with Ferrari was good for only 1 year.
Of
Um,
course. Yeah.
and I'm like, so now nobody can. I can't even get a copy of this game. So
Yeah.
nobody can get a copy of this game just because of this contract limitation. And I'm like, oh, it totally sucks. So I kind of wonder with Twisted Metal 3 and 4. So it would be with the Grand Tour. I think it would be very hard to just put up another version of the game and substitute in a different car. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. I guess they could have done that, but I mean, the team was off the game. They would basically need the team to come back and do that, which would have been a big deal. With Twisted Metal 3 and 4, the way that those songs were done is they were just regular CD tracks. CD track 1 was the game, like
Hmm.
all the data associated with the executable and all the 3D models and texture data. But tracks 2 through whatever were the actual tracks. If you put that CD in a CD player, it would just play the songs.
Yep.
So those would be super easy to replace without involving team members at all. So
Really?
they could easily swap this out. They're like, you know what? This is going to be a pain in the ass to re-up contracts or redo the deal because somebody's going to be like, hey, the deal was only good for PS1. It wasn't good for in perpetuity of platforms. So I could see them maybe briefly seeing if they could use the original tracks, and if it looked like too much friction, they're like, you know what, screw that. We're Sony. Meaning, and also, Sony is now they're under Sony Pictures now, but previously my group was under Sony Music. But still, I'm sure they have ties to Sony Music. Sony Music has a shitload of songs they could just grab from. It'd be like a no freaking brainer for them to just swap out a song. So I would be curious. Are the games out for PS5 or they're not out yet?
No, they come out July 15th, I believe is the date.
All right. I mean, any of you guys that I'd be curious what that end result is. I guess I wouldn't be surprised if a non-zero number of tracks aren't swapped out.
Yeah, same. Like maybe they'll keep Rob Zombie because they got Dracula in the show. I don't know if you saw the clip that released recently, but they might keep Rob Zombie maybe for the title, because the intro of TM3 is Meet the Creeper, and then TM4 is 1 Minute Silence. So I don't know. I feel like maybe the 1 minute silence they could keep because those were instrumental versions, which have not been released anywhere else that I could find. Those were made specifically for Twist 104 that I could find.
Yeah, those will still be there. Yeah, interesting you say about Meet the Creeper because that whole intro video was synced to that song. Like they could not swap out that song.
Right.
Also, that is actually in the video file, that song, and I don't know how easy it would be to swap that out. That would be a rare case where they couldn't just easily swap that out.
What if they just cut out the intro? You think that would be?
I mean, they
might
could do that. They could just cut out songs entirely and cut out the intro entirely. They could totally do that.
I hope not.
I hope not too. I doubt they would. They solve this, I'm sure, somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah,
cutting the intro to 3 would be sacrilege.
I love that intro. That intro is great.
Me too. I love that one. That's I always say TM3 is one of the best intros in the series because it always gets me pumped up. It always makes me want to
grandma flying through the window and all that stuff. It's awesome.
It's so cool. Oh, sorry. I just saw Mock. Welcome in, buddy. Thank you for the 245 bits. Mock says, oh God, I'm scared to ask you this one. He says, you don't have to ask this, but does Jim know about the inside joke, Backbreaking Buck? Have you heard that before?
Backbreaking Buck. No, I do not know what that is.
I think Zen started it. Who started? Does anyone know in the chat who started that joke? They would just say, "Oh, it's Jim Buck. It's Jim Backbreaking Buck." That was the joke. But I don't know when it started or like who brought that up.
I mean, I'll take that reputation if it's implying what I'm guessing it's implying.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yes.
Or it refers to the fact I'm so old that I'm breaking my back. I don't know.
No, it's definitely not. It's not an insult anyway. It's literally it's a praise. I always
keep in mind my daughter is on the chat.
Yes, yes. Zen says I always say I'm not gonna say that one. I do not make the Backbreaking Buck one. Yeah, I don't know who started that one up. I really don't know where that came from. But
I totally didn't hear that. I see somebody posted about they were a musician years ago and they stopped because life just got in the way. I know this isn't about my music stuff, but I can totally comment quickly on that.
No, go for it.
I started learning play guitar in the late 80s when I was in high school. Played it a little bit through college and then like totally put it down the second I moved out here to work on Rallycross. And then I had I don't know, in the late 90s I had an ex-girlfriend that bought me a handful of lessons, so I picked it up again for a little while and then put it back down. And then I didn't touch it again, from early 2000s to like 2018.
Wow.
Somebody on nextdoor.com had posted that, hey, local music school in the area I live in, that we're looking for an adult guitarist for an adult rock band program. And I just hadn't thought about touching my. At that time, I only owned one guitar. You can see they've reproduced quite a bit here. But at that time, I didn't think about hitting up the guitar again. I enjoyed guitar music. I would totally watch people play guitar and watch what are they doing and how they doing and everything, but never thought I should pick it up again. But when I saw that posting on Nextdoor, I'm like, an adult rock band program? That sounds freaking awesome. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go try out for that. And like I've done it and I haven't looked back since. So like it's never too late, I think, to get back into it.
Yeah.
I have guys that I do music with now that kind of were the same. They touched it when they were in their 20s and then they didn't because of career. A lot of them software developers, and then in their late 40s they picked it back up again and they're like, where have you been all my life, guitar? Um, so yeah, it's never too late to get back into it. I just regret not doing it all this time. Like I would have loved to have. There was a version of me long ago that I wanted to do musicianship full time. Like I wanted to
Hmm.
be in the next Def Leppard, the next Dawkins, or whatever. These bands still exist, and they've had guitarists that have left, and they've like auditioned newer guitarists. It's like, shit, I could have been in Duck and I could have been in these bands. Like if I just kept guitar all those years. Like
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
people that are virtuosos that started guitar like in the mid 2000s. If I kept at it since the late 80s, I just would be this insanely shreddy, like I'm the go-to guy in San Diego for like everything. Like now I'm just like some intermediate whatever that, you know, plays some 70s, 80s classic rock or whatever.
Sure.
um so yeah, no, I highly support if that guy gets back into it, with his son there, to go for it, man. Just go balls out, totally.
For sure. And I feel like with music, I mean, it's an art, right? So it's something you have to really be passionate about. And if you are
Yeah,
passionate about it, I mean, yeah, never give up on it. Just keep pushing through it, and it might work out for a career wise or just an awesome hobby. I mean, I respect any musicians out there because it's not easy work, for one, and two, if someone's talented at it, I mean, yeah, shred the shit out of that guitar. Keep doing it.
yeah. I mean, I call it a professional hobby, so I treat it
Yeah,
like a business.
yeah,
Um, because I've had twitchy thumbs for 20 years, like I had to do a lot of wearing the business hat and do business development, go
hmm,
to networking events, putting myself out there, seeing what people need. Hey, do you need a contractor to do something? Do you need somebody to port a project and all that stuff? So
yeah,
I brought those same skills now to music performance. So like I'll go to a venue and see a band, but then often I'll like actually last night I saw Gary Hoey was just playing in Pomona over here, kind of a pretty nuts and bolts bluesy rock guitarist guy from the 80s who's still putting out new albums. But
nice.
I talked to the bartender. I'm like who would I talk to potentially play here as an opening band for somebody? So I'll often get a lot of gigs put together by just sort of putting myself out there and hitting up venues and contacting people, and they're like, yeah, we need somebody to fill in, or hey, do you have a video reel of, some stuff that your band does? It's like, yes, I do. Here we go. And then they're like, okay, how is, a month and a half from now on Wednesday at 8 o'clock? Yes, we are available. Let's do it. So
Yeah.
yeah. And I do get paid for quite a few of these gigs, but when I say paid, it's like, um, you know, if I were still at Sony earning royalties on these games, it's that kind of money. Like it's, you know,
Yeah, it's for
sometimes the
fun.
band is
Yeah.
playing, yeah, 3 hours the band is playing and splitting $150. It's like
Oof.
it's not minimum wage even. It's just
Right.
cool to
Right.
pay for maybe gas, type
Yeah.
of thing.
But it's still
Um,
badass. I mean, even if you're making no money, I feel like the experience is what's worth it. And
yeah,
it's interesting you bring up, like the networking form of it. Like you get yourself into gigs because you go to shows and you talk to people. And I think
yeah,
that's kind of I understand that a lot in my form of work too. I feel like a lot of content creation is also social, and being social and networking with other people and reaching out to other
yeah,
creators, and just being open with people, because if you are a recluse and you're just in your own bubble, you're never
hmm,
going to expand. You're never going to get out there and get those gigs, so those dream gigs that you could get otherwise. So that's
yeah.
really cool.
No, it's totally true. I mean, I'm in three bands right now. Two I'm fairly active in, and for the most part, like these people are almost reclusive when we go to
Hmm.
our gigs. There's a couple of us that are fairly outgoing and we're willing to talk to people, but for the
Yeah.
most part, like they like to come to the gig and then maybe they'll stick around, they'll have a couple of beers afterward, but they're not like socializing at the venue. And they're certainly not hitting up, the manager of the place to ask about, so what's the deal here or anything like that. So it's
Yeah.
good when there is, somebody like me that does do that, because
Hmm.
otherwise, like we'll never perform. We'll just be rehearsing all the time, and we'll have the
Right.
very, very, very occasional gig that one of us randomly stumbled into. But as long as there's somebody that's willing to sort of put themselves out there, like I used to be, like when I was in my teens, I was super shy, like paralyzingly so. So it's cool that like you have to kind of get out of your shell to do these things. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think when I went to Sony and I moved out, like I was still living at home during college. So when I moved to San Diego, so moved to the other corner of the country, I kind of had to sort of get myself out there a little bit already because now I'm at a workplace, new people, and I'm all alone and I don't have friends here. Like I kind of got to put myself out there now. But then in 2000, when I started my first startup with a Twisted Metal team member, like we had to now start to talk to companies and random strangers and people that don't know tech and they know marketing, and we have to talk in those terms. And they're talking about things that kind of maybe are offensive to us, low level, on the ground, war members, and they're talking
Sure.
about, oh, remember that time when we did that contract, we screwed those developers over real good, and we're leaving that meeting, we're like, oh my god, did that just fucking happen? Holy crap. So you have to be horrified, and like you have to
Yeah.
put yourself out there though to be out there. But once like you have those skills, it's kind of cool. So
Yeah.
now I'm fairly outgoing, for the most part. I'm not like going to a bar and like, oh, I am so shy, I don't know what to do. I mean, initially when I was performing gigs, I was shy just because
Yeah.
you play guitar like shit, and everybody's looking at me, and now that's mostly kind of worked out of my brain. I'm like, I don't even get it. It's the whole, think of the crowd as if they're in their underwear type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
My brain kind of goes into that mode. It's like, oh, who are these guys?
Right.
Um,
Right.
but it takes those reps of sort of putting yourself out there to kind of
Yeah.
become numb to that type of stuff,
Exactly. Like I tell Chad all the time, I'm like, dude, if I saw your faces the entire time, I would not be doing this. Like if I was up
Oh,
on a stage and I
yeah.
could see all these people, we have like 80 people right now on YouTube and 70 or 60 on Twitch right now. It's like if I had 100 plus people out there looking at me, I don't know if I could do this. Like it's the fact that behind that computer screen makes it so much easier to not be as anxious. Because yeah, I respect you for that, because I don't think I could go up in front of people and perform, especially musically. It's tough.
Yeah, I've had to give it like we keep talking about this rallycross talk I gave. Like I had to do that. Like
Hmm.
holy shit, I had
Hmm.
to put a talk together, and then I have to stand in front of a bunch of people
Yeah.
and talk, and they're all looking at me. They're all listening to every word of mine. Oh
Yep.
my god! Like
Yep.
in high school, you could take like I forget what it's called, but there was like a speech course you could take, public speaking.
Yep.
I
Yep.
was like, no fucking way am I taking that. No chance, no how. You're gonna catch me dead before I will get up and take public speaking. But
Yeah.
now I kind of regret. Like I will tell my kids, like if they get that opportunity, do it.
Do it.
Work out that
Yep.
nervousness, and also with age, you also get. I'm to the age where I don't give a fuck what people think about me for the most part. Like things that I
Yeah.
would have been super nervous about,
Yeah.
like the things that like now my daughter gets embarrassed about when we go out in public. Dad, or mom. Like I'm like, oh, I'm on the other side of that wall
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. It's like,
So
look.
age also helps there, but just sort of doing the reps of getting in front of people. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if there is some version where you could do a in front of an audience live stream somehow.
Yeah.
Like I do recommend just doing it once, just sort of kind of work that out, just sort
Right.
of work out the nerves and all that. And after you do it, you'll be like, you know what? That was pretty cool. I'd be up for doing that again. And
Yeah.
you'll be nervous the next time, but like, 40% as nervous.
Agreed. Agreed. I tell it to
Yeah.
everybody in chat. I'm like, I hear it all the time for people. Well, I want to give streaming a try. I want to give videos a try, but I'm too nervous. So people are not going to like me or whatever. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, you don't know until you try. And what I've learned over the years is don't give a fuck what people think of you. And if you're
Yep.
being yourself and people hate on you, just block them. Ban them. Who cares? The
Yeah.
real people will be there. And you will find that audience as long as you're enjoying it. So you just gotta give it a try. You just gotta do it.
Oh, and also I found that when I thought people were thinking a certain thing about a situation that I'm in, and I find out afterward they weren't even thinking about it at all. Never mind thinking a certain opinion of it. And it's like, wow, I was way off in my assessment. Like you think people are just looking at you thinking, oh my god, this guy sucks.
Hmm.
There might be one or two people in the audience thinking that, but you're thinking it's like everybody. And there's like, no, most people are just sort of trying to listen, understand what you're saying, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all they're thinking.
Yeah.
You know, you're totally fine.
Right. Exactly. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to come back to it because I am really curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
What or how did you react, I guess, to the original feedback of Twisted Metal 3 and 4 back in the day? Like from the fans and the critics and all that stuff. Like what was going through your mind? How did it feel? You know?
It was pretty rough. I mean, we sort of knew that, like, yeah, these games are pretty different. We didn't start with the same code base or data.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we started from scratch because single track and Sony had a falling out, and the way the contract was structured, Sony had no access to these things.
Yeah.
So they were kind of caught with their pants down if they wanted to put out another game. They had to do it from scratch. So I knew these games were going to feel different.
Yeah.
First off, like, you know, there were complaints about physics. It's like, but we had a physics system and we had to use it. We could not, we had 10.5 months to deliver a Twisted Metal 3 coming from you know, a Formula One style open wheel racing game.
Yeah.
We had to keep whatever tech we had to and could reuse. We had to do it. And even with that, I was working 100-hour weeks for 10.5 months. So I couldn't even imagine having to start from scratch with creating tech from the ground up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I knew these games were going to feel less arcadey because it was based more on simulation physics. I didn't at all think about like the goofy endings, like how will the audience receive that? Because I thought people were like me; they don't really care about story. It's all about how this feels. So I was
Yeah.
more a little worried about the feel of it, which would reflect directly upon me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, the only things I was directly hearing, because, you know, internet was not what it is now. There was no social media. There were some news groups, and I was watching some news groups because I used to, even in my college days, be subscribed to news groups. But I was also on Twisted Metal Alliance at the time.
Sure.
What you guys know as TMA. I mean, that existed since I was working on Twisted 3, I think, or was it, maybe it was 4.
Yeah, because it
I
was
came
like
across
early
those guys.
online forums. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was hand created like forums by the guy Martin. I don't remember his last name. I think he's from New Zealand. He was running that. Um, so I saw some criticisms there, but you know, they're like, but Jim's kind of cool, so you know, we're not faulting him. Blah blah blah. We're faulting Sony. It's like, but I wrote all the physics. I don't know, whatever. I won't tell them that. The only
Yeah.
sort of more direct creepy thing we had. What was it? There was some conference that this was, I think, after our first startup in 2000.
Okay.
A couple of the other company founders went to a talk that Kelly Flock was giving, and I don't know how well known this Kelly Flock. He ran the Sony offices from
Yeah.
Foster City at the time. So he was the head. He was basically what, if you guys know who Shuhei Yoshida is, he was that guy during the 90s at Sony.
Mm.
He was giving a talk, and we were there watching the talk. And we were kind of waiting for him to be done with the talk because we were going to go for beers with Kelly. We were always going for beers with this guy. We had a relationship with him. So as we were exiting the talk, this wasn't a public thing. Maybe it was an E3 talk, because there was somebody in the audience that I guess was a huge devout Twisted Metal fan.
Okay.
And we were outside walking to where we were walking to. This guy caught up to us. He was like red faced. He was sweating. He was like out of breath. He looked super out of it, nervous, and he was like all upset. Basically, he was trying to ask Kelly, why did we remove this from Twisted Metal and Twisted Metal 3? Why did we not have this character? He was very upset. Like, he wanted us to answer for our claims or something.
That's so.
Like,
That's...
I didn't know if this guy. I mean, we could have taken him. He was a small guy, but I didn't know if he had a gun or not. I don't know. So that was like the only kind of real time I felt like, oh shit, this is some quote unquote feedback, but a little on the scary side. And Kelly managed to kind of blow him off so we could go grab beer wherever we were grabbing beer.
That's good. That's good.
But yeah, but now it's kind of like turn around the other side now, because at that time the people that were giving feedback were, I mean, now they're old farts, but at the time, you know, they were like teens and stuff. But now there are people that are like, oh my god, I grew up on Twisted Metal 3. Like, that was their first game.
Yeah.
Because they were kids at that time.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And now they're whatever 40 somethings and they're like, yeah, I grew up on that game. So it's like, your first Twisted Metal game was Twisted 3. Good on you, but you know that like the one to beat was Twisted Metal 2, and for me, Twisted Metal Black. Like
Yeah.
I love Twisted Metal Black. To me, that's the number one Twisted Metal game.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good to see that it's kind of now crossed over, that people are now bigger fans of Twisted Metal 3 and 4 than 1 and 2.
And that exactly comes into my next question, which is like, what does it feel now that you found out there is truly fans of 3 and 4 after all these years still?
Yeah.
Like, that's got to be a weird kind of almost gratifying, I guess, feeling, like knowing that not everybody hated it, you know, and that's definitely not the case.
Yeah.
I knew more people that loved it more than they hated it growing up. So
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It kind of at least justifies our work. I mean, that's it. I didn't need it to be justified, even though there was a vocal. I feel there was a vocal minority
yeah,
in the late '90s and early 2000s, because the sales reflected otherwise.
yes, exactly.
Twisted Metal 3, we saw huge royalty checks. We saw the best royalty checks that office had ever seen.
Woo.
And then Twisted 4, there was a drop, but it was still really good. I think part of the drop was because I think there were more people that were sharing the royalties. I think so many people saw how well Twisted Metal 3 did. They wanted to be sure they were on the Twisted Metal 4 project.
Yeah.
Not direct team members, but like marketing and stuff like that. Other sort of other teams that were part of putting out the game. But still really well done sales, real decent royalties. So I mean, the game sold very well. I mean, even was it Randy Zorka or Scott Campbell? One of them even said, when I was exchanging emails with them when we were starting to get PSP off the ground, because I was emailing them, arranging for a couple of their guys to come to my office to use my PSP hardware. But we were just sort of talking about the good old days, which was only a few years before that. They were like, no, I mean, we respected the Twisted Metal 3 and 4 games. I mean, maybe they weren't our cup of tea, but like the sales of those games were just crazy. Like we wish we did those sales.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they gave our games props, and they knew like the crazy schedules we had. So everybody that was sort of in the know, they're like, yeah, was Twisted Metal 3 the prettiest game in the world? No. Did it play the best in the world? No. But shit, they put out a full-blown physics-based shooting, multi-character, lots of art and sound effects game in 10.5 months. Like, who does that?
Agreed.
These dumbasses that are willing to work like crazy for 10.5 months. But yeah.
What's interesting to me is, like, still to this day, I think most people would agree with me on this. I don't think it's a hot take at all, but 3 and 4 on the PS1 era of Twisted Metal still are the best looking games in the series, like by far. And I think a lot of people, like even haters of 3 and 4, agreed that the games looked good for PS1 titles. And I always wonder why. Like, do you think it was just the what would you call it, the artists on 3 and 4 were just a little bit more like, they knew what they were doing more than the 1 and 2, or was it just luck of the draw? I guess I don't know. I always wonder why they look so much better.
I mean, it's a bunch of things. If I recall, Twisted Metal 1 and 2 ran at pretty low frame rate.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
It was either 15 or 20 frames per second. It ran pretty low. So that sort of, it doesn't make it look bad, but it gives the impression of it looking bad when it's like very jittery. Also, Twisted Metal 1 and 2 were the first and second generation of PS1 games. This was when people were still figuring out the hardware. It's also when they were still using a lot of the PlayStation 1 libraries to do things that people figured out later how to do by hand more optimally. So that said, Rallycross was a second generation game, and it looked really good. I thought the graphics of that were better than Twisted Metal 3, honestly. But we had guys that knew how to put together a pretty good renderer. They had artists that really knew how to put together some good models, how to use textures pretty well. We also had, like, I think some pretty good tech for palletizing our textures in a good way. That means like if you have a texture, to palletize it means to make this the way if you had a paint by numbers type of thing, the texture becomes a paint by numbers, and you have just a fixed number of colors that so color 1 is blue, color 2 is red, color 3 is white, whatever. So we had 256 color palettes, we had 16 color palettes, I think that was it. Yeah, that was probably it. So I think we had some tech that were able to sort of crunch down unpalletized textures to be at least a faithful representation palletized. Twisted 3 used the Rallycross render basically, so it inherited a lot of that tech. Twisted 4, I made a concerted effort to really improve the visuals of this. So one thing that I thought kind of sucked, we had in Rally Kart in Twisted 3, we had what was called a light map.
Yeah.
So wherever the car was, we had a 2D coordinate and what is the general lighting in that area. So we could have sort of shadows.
Yeah.
But we light the car, like the whole car is shaded that darkness.
Right. Right.
What you want is lighting that's more directional. This way, as light is falling on angled surfaces, you know, a surface that's facing the light will get a brighter coloring than a surface that's pointed more away from the light.
Yeah.
You don't get that if you're just coloring the whole car, like, you know, 0 through 255, you know, light value. So as a result, even though our Twisted Metal 3 vehicles, I think were like 240 tries and quads, I think was our budget.
Okay.
They looked fairly flat. They didn't look very shapely. Like you could see the outline of it, but within the outline, you couldn't really see any bumpy features because the lighting was the same value all around. Just unless the artist baked something in the texture to sort of give it some shape to it, it just looked fairly flat. And I told the artist, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, is that the reason why 4 looked so shiny with all the cars?
So yeah, 4 looked better because I'm like, you know what? I want these cars to look more 3D.
Okay.
But we're going to give them a crazy low budget. When I first told them this number, like they wanted to murder me, I think. Like now low poly cars is like, look at my low poly 30,000 triangle car. I'm like, fuck you. That's not low. That's crazy talk.
Yeah.
So our artist had 80 triangles and quads for Twisted Metal 4 cars.
Wow.
But I'm like, if you can do that, I'm going to have 3D directional lighting. We're going to get rid of the light maps entirely. We're going to have like a sun value. We're going to have like weapons that, like, you firing weapons, they're going to light you up as you're firing them, and it's going to light it up from the side that it's coming from. As missiles fly over you, we're going to take those into account. So between that, I was also going to implement specular mapping and reflection mapping. If like there's chrome bumpers or windshields and stuff like that, we want to see, you know, like a texture map kind of slide across it like some light was hitting it.
Yeah.
So all these features, we would be able to see the 3D-ness of the vehicle. So even though these 80 triangle quad cars are like 1/3 the budget of the Twisted Metal 3 ones, they look way more 3D. They look way better. And we have colored lighting on it now. Before it was just like a white kind of lighting that we were doing on Twisted Metal 3, 0 through 255 scaling of, you know, the overall brightness of the model.
Yeah.
Twisted Metal 3, like if you have a red rocket firing over you, I'm applying red lighting. If you have a purple rocket flying over you, I'm applying purple lighting. Machine guns have some orange light attached to it, so wherever that's coming from, your car is being flashed orange. So like this was a more colorful representation of more accurate representation of lighting, and as a result, like Twisted Metal 4 looked way better, I thought, because of that.
Was that because you know when the PS2 came out, one of the biggest selling points of games on the PS2 was, oh, we can do real-time lighting effects now, and you see that really evident in TM Black, you know, because the whole game is dark and dreary, but then the missiles shoot, and it's like this beautiful, you know, firework of purples and reds and whatever. Now, was that pretty rare on the PS1 to do these kind of like, you're kind of describing real-time lighting effects almost with TM4. Was that revolutionary, or was that something that was at that time on the PS1?
So I don't think I was applying it. No, I was not applying it to the environment or the world. I was only applying it to the car. So if a missile went over the world, you wouldn't see anything different. That was still,
it was just the car,
sort of pretty lit. Now that said, the PlayStation 1 had dynamic lighting hardware. I mean, you had up to 3 lights that you can apply in a single instruction to the vector unit, the GCE, which was their math unit.
Okay.
So you could totally apply 3 lights with 1 call to that. So you could do real-time lighting. It would have been harder, I think, with the environment, because you wouldn't want to apply this particular math operation to every part of the environment. What you would probably want to do, well, not only that, so a lot of these triangles and quads of your environment could be pretty large. So when
Okay.
you're lighting that, if a single like homing missile or whatever the purple or orange one is, it flies over a large quad, it's going to light that whole quad this
Sure.
bright orange color, and you'll see it lighting it from quad. Like you'll see how the world was kind of chopped up into these quads.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So it didn't
if
look that
anything,
great.
it wouldn't look that great. On PS2, you can chop up the world mesh into a much finer thing and light it in
Mm-hmm.
this way, and it wouldn't look so obvious.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's what's maybe meant by that, and you could have more lights. Like if you wanted to do 4 lights on the PlayStation, you needed to do this calculation twice because 1 calculation does 3. To do a
Yeah.
4th one, you need to do a whole nother calculation at 3, but ignore the other 2 of the 3, or you could do up to 6 in that case.
Okay.
Um, and that got expensive after a while. So in PlayStation 2, you could probably do it a little bit more generically and not be locked into just 3 per whatever.
Right. Right.
So it would scale based on the number of lights.
But,
So that's probably what was meant.
yeah, yeah. And Pepito has a good question. I'm gonna get to that in just a second. Before I do, it's ironic, you're talking about the TM4 with that really impressive lighting situation on the vehicles. And
Mhm.
what's funny is like all my life, and even now with the community, whenever I play TM4, at least one person always makes the comment of like, man, the it's weird going from TM3 to TM4 with every car looks like they're chrome, or they're like shiny. And you're
Yep.
like, I don't like the shininess. I don't like how it looks. But now hearing why it was done that way is actually, to me now, I respect it more. It's more interesting, I guess. It's more
Yeah.
impressive. So I get why it
Oh,
was done that way for sure now over how it looked in TM3. Yeah.
well, also once the artists were like, "Oh, you're letting us do chrome and reflection. Oh, I'm going to put it all over the damn car." Like,
Yeah.
they also might have went a little cuckoo crazy about it as well, because they're used to they were using Alias Wavefront, which was used to render movies and shit like that,
Oh,
and
okay.
they're modeling in this package that can make things look super realistic. So they want to make these cars look as close to as what they could make it look like in
Yeah.
Alias Wavefront. So when we start having like cool graphical features, they're like totally going to do it. They're going to go
Yeah.
for using it.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense now. And Pepino, this is a question I'm curious as well. Is when it comes to the regeneration mechanic in TM3, I believe it is in 4 as well, but it's hidden. Pedro pointed out to me where like
Mhm.
on for the first level of construction yard, for instance, you start playing going against 2 characters, but you kill one, and all of a sudden there's still 2 left. Like one spawns randomly, but you're not told it's spawning. Where in 3,
Yeah.
it pops up regeneration happening, and then more people come through. Was that
Mhm.
specifically for performance, or was that to pace the game, like add more padding, I guess, to make it longer?
I think it's a little both. I mean, the less cars in the environment, the less processing you have to do, so the better chance you have at hitting a solid 30 frames per second.
Yeah.
But I think it also gave them a balancing control to fine tune.
Mm.
Like if the level otherwise had all the cars all the time, and because also the way the AI worked, it was often targeting the player. Suddenly
Yeah.
you'd find yourself in an orgy of like too many cars are trying
Yeah.
to
Very
like
chaotic.
really hit you at the same time.
Yeah.
Whereas if they could just like dial it down, like, all right, let's only put a few out there, so at least if they're all attacking the player's not too overwhelmed. So I think it was
Hmm.
a combination of both performance and sort of game balancing reasons.
That's cool. I did not think about the second point about making it more, I guess, playable for newbies, right? Or just for
Yeah.
not making it as an extreme situation of like, oh, I'm on level 6 now. I think, like, for instance, London and TM3, you go against, I want to say it's 4. And then when
Hmm.
regeneration happens, there's 2 more that pop up. So it's like a total of 6. And then you fight
Hmm.
minion. I can't remember how many there are total off the top of my head, but let's just say, you get to or the London level, and there's 6
Hmm.
right off the rip, and then a boss
Hmm.
battle. I can see
Yeah.
that being, for especially a first time player, huge turnoff. Like that might not make people want to come back. Even if,
Mhm.
let's say, performance wise, it didn't matter. You could put all 6 at once and it wouldn't matter.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
as a developer or whatever, I probably would have done the same thing to space it out a little bit to make it so,
Mhm.
okay, you got a little bit of time for them to load in because the text is popping up, run and get a health right now. And there,
Mhm.
so no, I totally get that. I never even thought about that. I was just assuming, oh, it's 100% like PS1 cannot handle this many cards at once.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the original reason, and then I think they later thought, "Oh, well, we could also use this to figure out what is the maximum number of cards we should be sort of pounding on the player at once."
Yeah,
But yeah, I don't remember if it was definitely performance, but I would not be surprised just knowing all the stuff it had to do, all the collision calculations and physics, and because I wrote all that code, so I know it was really pushing the CPU on that.
right. That makes sense. All right,
Yeah.
let's see. So let's see, we already asked about that one. Do you remember why the beta name for Twist Metal 3 was just called Calypso's Revenge? Do you remember if there was like a story at that point in mind, or was that just straight up someone made that up on the fly just for fun?
Um, I somebody probably had an idea. I don't remember what it was. Whatever it was, I don't think it was super fleshed out. I think that they thought if we're going to call this Twisted Metal 3, we need to give it a subtitle just to sort of make
Yeah.
it stand out. Um, but yeah, obviously that didn't pan out too far because I don't remember that loading screen lasting beyond that first build. Was it in the first build? I
It
think it was in the
was, yeah, it
first
was
build.
very early because it was in that video that PlayStation Museum released. I think that I showed you where it's like
Yeah.
the USPS truck and Grim is on a gigantic motorcycle and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess what's funny too is Calypso's Revenge probably still could have worked for the final build too, just because of how all of the wishes get twisted. I believe I don't think there's one
Hmm.
where it works out in the driver's favor, if I remember right.
No, yeah, I don't know. You guys know better than me on that front, but yeah. Um, well, after Sweet Tooth took over in TM4, if there was a TM5, that could have been Calypso's Revenge,
True. Yeah, that's very true.
which we
Um,
did pitch to Sony, by the way. We did pitch PS or TM5 to Sony.
was it going to be a PS2 title?
No, this would have been a PS1 title.
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah, at that time, this was after I left Sony to do a startup in 2000.
Hmm.
We saw a small Brawl release. We're like, when the hell did that get worked on? We had heard nothing about Small Brawl being worked on. Like, and we're in Sony. We normally hear this shit. Even after we left Sony, we know people there. They would say, "Hey, did you know they're working on another Twisted Metal for PS1?" Like, we'd be like, "What?"
Yeah.
So I was beyond shocked. I'm like, Sony's willing to put out Twisted Metal games for PS1, even though, people are working on PS2 games. So I'm like,
Yeah.
talk to somebody about um, doing a Twisted Metal 5. Like with the Twisted Metal 4 code base, we could easily bang out a Twisted Metal 5, no problem. Original team, or at least core members of the original team with the Twisted Metal 4 code base, we could definitely put out a game in less than a year. So we thought that'd be an easy project to do as our own company now. And we did actually talk to the guy Alan Becker that was head of Sony Santa Monica. He did have a phone meeting with us. We sent him a proposal, I think, and then we
Okay.
talked about the phone, and he thought about it. He was considering it, but I think he said the financials just didn't make sense, if I recall. I mean, this is so long ago now, but
Yeah.
um, it was cool that we got far enough along that they were considering it.
Right. Right. And there's a couple
Yeah.
things I want to branch out from that. One, do you know about Angel? He's in chat right now. Angel Mendez. He made a fan made project called Twist Metal 5. Have you heard about that before?
Yeah, I've heard about it. Yeah, yeah.
And it's awesome.
I've
I
heard
mean, the
about it.
amount of work that he's put into it, a lot of other people from the community have worked on it as well.
Yeah.
It's just cool, that seeing that people all these years later are working on fan projects and trying to bring back Twisted Metal again. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's cool to know that you guys could have possibly made the Twist Metal 5, you know?
That would have been cool. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
Angels would have been Twisted Metal 6.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That would have been
Yeah.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you ever wanna reach out to Angel and he'd probably be open for you to help him out with stuff in that game because it's a community effort. So I know
I don't
Zen
remember
was
what engine he was using. Was he using
I
Unity or
think
something? Or
Unity. I don't think it's Unreal. I think it's Unity engine. if I remember right.
'Cause yeah, 'cause I think the Twisted Metal 4 remake that somebody put out there was
Hmm.
Unity based, if I
That was
recall.
Unity as
But
well, I believe.
yeah. I used Unity once 9 years ago for a project client was doing at the time, and I haven't touched it since. Actually, no, that's not true. I touched it briefly last year for a short-term project.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm definitely not a C# coder. I could, if need be, if somebody wanted to contract me, like I wouldn't be able to do it just for fun. But if somebody wanted to contract Twitchy Thumbs Entertainment, I would
That's
totally
right.
be down for that.
That's right. Yeah, because if you guys didn't know, Jim is still working in the gaming industry, and I don't know if you're open to talking about the Sony stuff that's going on right now. It's up to you if you want to
I
bring it
mean,
up
I'm
or we.
generally talking to them about a possibility. I mean, I'm looking at I'm also open to full-time employment, so I look at different companies. I'm also, looking at Adobe, Nvidia, Qualcomm,
Yeah.
my old Sony alma mater office in Sorrento Valley here in San Diego. I'm also sort of looking at when they might have some position open that looks like I could slide into. It's nothing right now. It's nothing that that I'm anywheres with, but I am chatting with them. I was even talking with Sony Pictures earlier in the year, which would have been cool because
Yeah.
Sony Pictures has the Sony PlayStation Group under them,
Right.
and the group I was talking to, they were hit up to do some. I think they did some prototype stuff initially for the Twisted Metal TV series
Oh.
in the LED, like the like how the Mandalorian has that LED room
Yeah.
that they use to make it look like they're in a set, an outdoor set that they're not actually at.
Yeah.
I think this group I was talking to did some early prototyping for the Twisted Metal crew, and then the Twisted Metal crew opted not to use that tech.
Oh, that would have
um,
been so cool.
yeah, I asked about that because in the email signature of like the recruiter, like she was, advertising like into the Spider Verse
Yeah.
and the Gran Turismo movie and the Twisted Metal series. I'm like, I gotta ask somebody next time I'm in an interview. So what did you guys do in the Twisted Metal series? I used to work on the games, and
Yeah.
I found out they only did a prototype thing and they didn't actually
Mm.
get their stuff used for realsies in the final episodes.
I
But that would
gotcha.
have been cool. There was like a version of this history where I potentially could have gone to that team, and maybe the second season would have used
Oh,
their stuff, and I would have worked on Twisted Metal the TV series, which would have been super super cool. But that
yeah.
is not for me.
Well, maybe season 3. There's still a chance. You never know.
Never know.
That'd be
Never
so
know.
cool. I see Madman
Yeah.
in there. Thank you for that $2 super chat, my man. He's asking, why did you change Mr. Grimm to Captain Grimm in Twist Metal 4?
Um,
If you remember, I don't know whose choice that might have been. But
I don't remember other than if I had to guess, just sort of knowing the team, they probably wanted to just do something different. Like,
yeah.
I mean, the same way any of the characters got changed from Twisted Metal to like some additional twist. They're like, well, we
Mhm.
want to put our spin on it. So maybe they wanted to bring back that character, but do some new twist on it.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, yeah.
Sadly, I don't think the fan base was happy with that change, but it's understandable. It happens. Also, Goodrich,
Yeah.
welcome in. Good to see you, man. Hope you're having a good night.
Oh, he's
David
there.
Goodrich, yeah,
Cool.
he's in the chat there on the YouTube side. Small Bro was a Sony project designed to kill off Vigilante 8, he says.
Oh shit!
Wow.
Wow. That's whoa. There's a story there I want to hear at some point.
I believe he talked about it a lot I did an interview with Goodrich almost 2 years ago now. It was a while ago on my YouTube channel, and I
Oh,
believe he talked about that in
dig
the
that up.
interview there.
All right,
Um,
I'll have to dig that up then. That's
but
cool because I
yeah,
that's the type of stuff I love. Like he also learned some things about the inside of
yeah,
the games I worked on and was surprised about. And
yeah,
like I love those insider stories. Like what happens when you go to beer sessions with the leader of a company? Like it's horrifying sometimes what comes from that. But I
oh
love
yeah,
that shit.
it's same here. I think we all do.
Yeah,
Everybody loves the behind the scenes stuff because on these games, not a lot of people talking about them, and they need to.
yeah, yeah.
Hire the team away from Luxoflux is what Goodrich said. Yeah,
Okay, damn.
yeah. Well, they got the
That's
lead dev.
yeah. Oh
That's
man.
wild. Speaking of Small Brawl too, because you said you pitched the idea for TM5, and then they came back to make
Yeah.
Small Brawl on the PS1. And the way Dave
Mhm.
described it, it makes a lot of sense why they chose to go with Small Brawl and not like a new entry to the
Yeah.
series. Like they wanted a spin off for all the kids
Yeah.
that did not have the money to get a PS2. They were like,
Mhm.
we want to make something for the younger generation that can play a game on the PS1 because the older brother or whatever,
Yeah.
has moved on to the PS2 era, and also not to have conflicting sales with Black, I guess, on the PS2. So I
Yeah.
do
Yeah,
kind of get it
definitely.
to some degree, but it still sucks because I feel like if Small Brawl would have came out on the PS2, I honestly think it could have gotten a sequel. I think it could have done a lot better for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that would've been pretty sweet.
hmm do you? This is kind of a question you might not remember at all, but I was just curious. Do you remember whose idea it was on the team to add the switches on the final blimp level in Twist Metal 3? Like in order to stop the regeneration from happening. Do you remember who did that?
I think that was Jay Beard's idea. I kinda wanna remember there was some discussion over whether this final challenge should be something a little bit more than just simply fighting a boss.
Mm,
And I kind of wonder if he wasn't thinking back to like Doom, where you had
yeah,
to get the key for the red door, then open the red door, get the key for like you had to sort of unlock the path type of
right,
thing.
right.
Um, so that smells like Jay Beard to me, honestly.
That smells like JP. Okay.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
really sounds like a Jay Beard thing.
Well, that's
If I
cool
could
because yeah,
guess.
I want to praise him for that because I've always been on the side. I've heard so many people over the years like shit on that level because they
Hmm.
hate the switches. They're like, oh, it's so annoying, and it took me forever to figure
Hmm.
out. I think it's a really cool idea, and I don't really feel like Twisted Metal except for maybe the PS3 version. I don't think Twisted
Hmm.
Metal really has come back to adding extra elements to a boss fight like that, where
Hmm.
you need to do something that's outside, like thinking outside the box in order to get to the final boss, right? Or something like that.
Hmm.
So I always
Yeah.
like that about 3. I think it added again, it might have been padding or whatever, but it added more to the actual story or the tournament version. And
Hmm.
I always thought it was fun, to be able to destroy those switches to unlock the final boss, so to speak.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, totally. I see Curry's trying to
mhm.
get our attention or my attention. I don't know, but yeah, I totally do like some kind of thing with the old team. I mean, I don't know if they're all. I assume some of them are retired by now. It was rough though because there was a lot of fighting on the team as well. There was back then there was a lot of artists versus programmers mentality. Like the artists wanted to be able to do more and more in the game, and we're like, this is all we can do in this amount of time combined with this is all the platform can push, man.
Yeah.
It has limitations, but I did enjoy those days, and I still have contact with most of that team. I definitely would work with them, but I would also be fine with not working with them too. So,
That's
but
understandable.
like if Twisted Metal 3 and 4 were like, hey, we want these games. I'm 99.9999. I'm 100% positive it's just PlayStation 1 emulations on the PlayStation 5. But if they're like, we want to get the team back together, take the PlayStation 1 code, port it to PS5, add a couple of cars, upres the existing cars, add a couple more environments. We'll totally pay you guys to just do this, like for a
Yeah.
year or 2 years, maybe.
Yeah.
I would absolutely without if I were employed at another job, I would insta quit in order to do that project.
Oh, for sure. I think
Or
any of the
yeah,
people that worked in these games, I feel like I've heard that from so many people. I know Goodrich definitely said the same thing. He would drop everything and work on it if they asked him to.
yeah,
Um,
totally.
and
These
it,
Cowboys.
it's interesting, hearing about like the talking about the team that used to work with back on 3 and 4, and it's honestly
Hmm.
astounding. It's astounding to me that you guys didn't result in more crash outs or people fighting to the point of like I'm quitting because of the long hours, the crunch, the 7 days a week working for 10 months straight to get that game out there. I feel like
Hmm.
any human at some point would hit a breaking point, right? And just like I would be pissed off every day and be fighting everybody. Like I don't know if I could do that. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
after Twisted Metal 4, we definitely had an ass full of each other. We did kind of split up team wise after that, but we
Mm.
also the programmers left after
Uh,
that anyways to start our own thing.
yeah.
But we definitely went different ways team wise. Artists started up on a different project with a couple other different programmers. Project that got canceled.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, we left just to do our own thing initially for Sony Online. And then 9/11 hit, and then we didn't get
Yep.
another contract. So then I went back to Sony after that. But yeah, it did get a little ugly. It was definitely an us versus them mentality.
Sure.
And that did suck. And now, like, platforms are so powerful. Like, I don't think that can happen anymore. I mean, games I've worked on in more recent years, like, there was never this issue. Um, like, programmers, why don't you give us the ability to do blah? The thing that you can already do because we have a mature game engine, or you're using an off-the-shelf game engine now. Like,
Yeah.
you're fine, do it, whatever.
Yeah.
um,
Well, it's good that things are starting to change, for the better as time has gone on. But now with the gaming
yeah,
industry is kind of crazy right now, a lot of layoffs happening and a lot of uncertainty. So hopefully
totally.
just hopefully it kind of comes back to the good old days in a way with that, and Sony starts worrying more about their games than their hardware. Because
Hmm.
I feel like, I talked to Dave about this and a few other people, and they all seem to kind of have the same thoughts of like, Sony has always been more of a hardware uh, company than a software, than like the games itself. So they like
Yeah.
to promote games that show off the hardware more than games that are genuinely good games that would sell a lot, which is sad. And I hope that eventually someone at the higher up will realize, like, they don't necessarily have to be blockbuster titles to make money. It just has to be fun. It has to be a good game. And I feel like Twisted Metal fits that bill perfectly. Like, I don't think anybody would look at Twisted Metal and be like, oh yeah, this is gonna sell billions. This is the next GTA. This is the console seller. But I do feel like Twisted Metal in 2025 could sell enough to be where it's successful, making people money, making people jobs, and it not that it has to be live service by any means, but I feel like it could be a game that's ever updating with new content and skins and stuff like that and online capabilities, because multiplayer is where these games shine. For me
Yeah.
at least, I feel.
Totally. Totally. I already know that Sony is not up for hearing a pitch of, yeah, you're left with the same thing I am.
Yeah.
He knows the answer to this question. God damn it.
Thank you, Dave.
So Sony will not accept a pitch of just a good game. They want to. I will get to Dave's question though, but not to short teaching there. Um, Sony wants to know, how are you going to specially utilize their hardware? Like,
Yes.
what will this do with our PS Move controllers? What will this do with our VR headset? How will this stand out? Because they want to stand out from the other hardware, but like, it's a risk for a developer to go all in on just your hardware. Like,
Yeah.
we want our game on Steam, we want our game on PlayStation and Xbox, so we want a game that's just a good game that
Right.
can work on all the platforms. So it's unfortunate because I know why they want you to have a game that's specific to their platform, but there is no motivation for the developer to do so unless Sony like is ponying up the money for you to do that.
Right. Right.
Like you have a good game idea and they see enough promise to, like, all right, we like this game idea, but we want you to change this game idea so it's kind of locked into a PlayStation platform. What can you do
Yeah.
to make it locked into a PlayStation platform? And we will fund blah 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 amount for blah 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 amount of time and all this stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, to answer Dave's question, I mean, it's nothing earth shattering. It's that, I mean, it's the reason why Twisted Metal 3 exists. And he knows this, goddammit. He was on the Vigilante 8 team, and Vigilante 8 had some early screenshots coming out, some early articles coming out in magazines, and it was looking good. Like, it looked great, looked pretty
Yeah.
sexy, like PlayStation 1 graphics. This looks pretty awesome. And then Kelly was getting a little worried because they no longer had a relationship with Single Track, who was making the Twisted Metal games, but Twisted Metal was the car combat franchise on the planet, if but certainly on PlayStation 1. They
Hmm.
didn't want some third parties because Vigilante was not going to be like a Sony published game. I don't remember who
Activision, I think,
published
was
it.
the
Oh, Activision, yeah.
publisher. Yeah.
Um, so they didn't want the car combat, crown to go to a not Twisted Metal game.
Hmm.
So he's like, well, shit, what can we do? What can we do real quick? Like, we have to ship something by, the following Christmas. And he knew us pretty well because he was coming down and, having beers with us and chatting with us. He knew we were delivering games each year. So he's like, all right, I have a team. They're about to roll off Kart World Series because this was like fall '97, and like they're done. They're basically done. They have a code base ready to go. They have an art path ready to go. You know how to get art into the game from Alias Wavefront. They
Mm-hmm.
have renderer in place. They just basically have a bunch of tech in place that could theoretically become a car combat game. And he liked us, and he knew he's all about if you're a team that delivers, like we want to keep giving you projects and keep you happy. Don't let the team leave. Don't let make people paid well enough that they're happy to stay at the company and all this stuff. He's all about if you can ship games, you are like a money printing machine for a company.
Right.
A lot of companies these days don't recognize that,
Yeah.
but he did, and that was the one awesome thing that I think everybody that knew Kelly Falk would agree with.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, well, we have a team ready to go. They're interested. They're up for it. They have tech ready to go. We need something by next Christmas. Go.
Good luck.
We basically had to be out there so that V8 couldn't like scoop the car combat franchise. Now I don't know which game came out first, but we probably came out at approximately plus or minus the same time. If I had to guess, there's probably a Wikipedia page that says that, or Dave can plop in the chat what their ship date was. But we shipped for Black Friday, 1998.
Wow. That's right. Black Friday. Another crazy day for that one.
Yeah, I mean that was the time to get on the shelf. Like we better like get our gold master to DADC, which was some company in Midwest that burnt all the discs so they could burn super fast. They had people there overnight ready to go to burn all these discs to just ship out to the stores.
Wow.
ASAP.
If I was old enough back then, I would have been the guy like trampling people at the door to get TM3.
Yeah.
Give me that game now.
Yeah. So yeah, that ended up being basically 10 and a half months because after Kart World Series, we went on break for the holiday, got back second week of January, and we were basically done, mid-end of October.
Wow.
To make that time frame.
It still blows my mind from early development to finished product less than a year. It still blows in 10 months. I mean, that's I know Small Brawl was also a really quick development from what Dave told me. I think it was like 9 or 10 months, the same thing. So blows my mind that you guys were able to do that much work in that little time and make a successful product that we still play to this day. It's huge.
Yeah, I mean, Twisted Metal 3 was not what we wanted to release. It's just where we were at that time. So Twisted Metal 4 was really spent polishing all the things that we wish we had time to do in Twisted Metal 3, while at the same time having new environments and some new characters and stuff like that.
Right. And it shows. I mean, the physics I feel in 4, the control, I think, is the biggest thing I praise for doing. It's the only game in the series that I can recall off the top of my head where you can boost in the air and then in the air control your vehicle to boost and fly to certain directions, like land on certain areas.
Yep.
It just, the amount of control, it feels like the most arcade-esque gameplay that really is satisfying for the player. And I wish more games in the series kind of took that inspiration from 4 to kind of build upon it, I suppose. But even though I love the gameplay of Black, don't get me wrong, I do feel like could have actually been better, even if it had that kind of arcade control that you guys brought in 4, because it was a huge step up for me from 3.
Well, there were a lot of things. They're like, we want to be able to steer in midair. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not real physics. But I figured out a way to do it with my system. We also want to be able to sort of rotate in place on the ground. And I think I implemented something there. Also, we didn't want the flipping over of the car to be a big pain in the ass. So we made the physics so that it didn't flip over as easily. And when it did, we just popped you back.
Yep.
So yeah, we tried to make a lot of concessions there. Yeah.
This question actually comes from someone in the community. They asked me the other day to ask you about this from Reina. They were asking, and this is verbatim how they wrote it. So if it's kind of confusing, I'll try to reiterate the way I guess how it comes across.
Yeah.
But they said, how does the game handle things happening off screen? I believe they're talking about maybe 3 and 4 together, either one. So how does the game handle things happening off screen? What optimizations were applied? While the AI in both games are certainly do attack each other, I don't remember things slowing down as much as if they were on screen. So I'm wondering if the physics are simplified or sprites not being rendered, etc. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No,
Hopefully.
no, I totally know what they're asking. The
Okay.
simulation is running whether it's on screen or not. So the AI is still working off screen. Physics are still working off screen. There's no
Wow.
cheating there. Um, so the only thing that we're doing as far as this kind of optimization that they're referring to goes is what we try to render.
Okay.
So we had a view cone and we knew what parts of the world were within the view cone, and we would only render those objects and parts of the environment within the view cone. And that's
Hmm.
why if suddenly there was a lot of shit happening on the screen, a lot of weapons, a lot of semi-transparent stuff. Semi-transparent things were very slow on PlayStation 1.
Yeah.
It would slow down if there's just a lot of shit going on the screen. A lot of shit could be going on off the screen, totally fine. It was the rendering that would slow down. So
Yeah.
that was the thing that would slow things down, not the simulation itself. Um, like even if the simulation were more optimized, that wouldn't have helped if you had shit on the screen because just some of those semi-transparent effects were just really bringing. Like I think some of you guys that hacked was it Twisted Metal 3 and then got like Dark Sides special to just do crazy shit. Dark Sides was
Yes.
the
Yeah.
worst, and I think I was constantly telling those guys to crank it down because it was just layers on layers of full screen transparencies,
Hmm.
and it just was crazy slow because the renderer has to like in order to do semi-transparency, the GPU has to read a value from VRAM, like what's the current color in VRAM, so I can properly combine it with the color I want to put there to
Yeah.
get a proper transparency. And those reads were excessively slow.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, the slowdowns were pretty much all about the rendering, not the physics simulation or
Okay,
the
that makes
AI.
sense. And I know that
Yeah.
like one thing I always praise 3 and 4 for as well is because it's the only two games in the series that I believe it is. The only two games in the series you can hold a button down and look behind you whenever you want. There's no rear view mirror that you have to apply on the screen. You just hold a button and the whole screen flips to behind you, which I think is so like genius. Like you need that in these games. And it's so weird that none of the other games implemented that except for 3 and 4. And I always thought it was impressive because you think about it, that means at all times the entire level is being rendered around you. There's no, like you said, there's no cheating. There's no like just what the player is looking at is being rendered, or maybe it does just flip that fast. But you would
Oh, it
assume
does.
it does just flip
Yeah.
that fast. Wow. Okay.
The rendering, we were like, oh, now the cone is behind us. We're only going to
Yeah.
render there, but the
Yeah.
simulation still going on. The reason why that feature is there is because it was there in Rallycross and Kart World Series. We just left it there.
Wow. Okay. That's
So
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
Twisted 3 and 4 inherited any features that made sense from the two racing games. That was one of
Okay.
them.
Yeah, and look, yeah, the looking behind you is such a interval thing. I think for especially players like me and Witch Dust and Zen and other people who speedrun TM3 and 4.
Hmm.
Being able to look behind you on the fly like that to do rear attacks and stuff is just it's huge. And I always
Hmm.
thought it was funny how with like TM2, TM1, I think even TM Black, and I don't remember if Small Brawl has it at all, but there, you can put the rear view mirror up above, and it always felt like the game would run at half speed then, because then it's
Hmm.
rendering both at the same time, which is
Hmm.
like, I would rather have better performance, keep the same pace, and be able to look behind me without looking in front of me for a few seconds than to have both at the same time, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't. We did implement split screen multiplayer up to 4, and I don't
Yeah.
remember. We
But,
might have implemented like in some of those cases, like the cars had 3 levels of resolution depending on how far you were away, and
mhm.
the environment I believe had 2 levels of resolution. So I think when we had multiplayer split screen, especially the 4 player, I think we just used the lower resolution for rendering the different
Oh, that makes
screens.
sense. Yeah, to not
Yeah,
destroy the frames.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
but I think even in that case, we may have run at 15 frames per second, if I
It definitely
recall.
is lower. I know it's a lot slower
Yeah,
than with single player for sure, but that's
like
understandable. I mean,
we just had to in that case. I think we
yeah.
were. Well, oh, you know what it was we were doing, if I recall? I think what we were like the simulation itself was running at 30 frames per second,
Yeah.
and then every other one we were rendering 2 of the screens. So player 1 and 2 we would render 1 frame, and then
Oh,
3 and 4 the next frame, if I'm recalling right. I think that's how we did that.
wow.
Because yeah, because in 2 player split screen, I think that was meant to be 30 frames. I don't know if it ever achieved it, but we were simulating as if it were 30 frames,
Yeah.
but we were rendering 2 screens. So
Did
yeah, that was interesting.
Did you guys add the 4-player split screen? Because I think, if I remember right, the multi-tap for the PS1 to add 4 controllers, that wasn't even a thing when like TM2 came out. I think that was later on, wasn't it?
We did we Twisted 4, I think we or not Rallycross. Didn't we have it in Rallycross?
Oh, maybe.
I want to say we did. No, the multi-tap I think came out at least while we were working on Rallycross.
Because I don't. Yeah, I'd have to look it up. I don't. Maybe someone in chat knows when the multi-tap released for the PS1. I just from memory, it's blurry, but I could have sworn it was more like end of the 90s or like 98, roughly around there when it released.
Yeah, I'm curious myself. The wiki page doesn't seem to have a year. We had early
Rallycross 2 had 4-player, Nightmare says.
Yeah, I don't remember what Rallycross 1 had. What it had 4? Maybe it only had 2. Oh, no, you know what it had? It did have 2. But then I did a link cable version because we wanted link cable for Part World Series. So I made a link cable version of Rallycross that was after we released the game, so it's not a version that people can buy. And then I had it where it was 2 and 2, so 2 people on one TV and 2 people on the other TV. So yeah, we didn't have a local 4.
Okay.
But I wanted to do on Twisted 4 or Twisted 3. Do we have the ability? Is there a 4-player split screen on Twisted 3?
Yes, I believe so. I
I
might
have
wrong,
implemented
but
where
I could
we
have
could
sworn
do.
there is.
There might be, and then on the hidden link cable feature, you might be able to do 4 and 4, so 8 people
Yeah.
total.
Wow,
Yeah,
that'd be crazy. 8-player lobby. That's crazy. It's just wild to me that you guys are able to do it. And the other thing too, I know Witch Dust will appreciate this one, is the other thing that's amazing is 3 and 4 are the only games in the series, and this is also including the PS3 version, where you can completely remap your controllers in the games. Like every button can be remapped where you want it to be. So
yeah, that was me. I was heavily influenced by Quake 2 at the time, and like so certain things that Quake 2 had, I wanted these games to have. So like, Twisted 3 has as its sort of menuing system, just sort of kind of text and minimal graphics on top of the game sort of playing in the background. The reason why I did that was Quake 2 does that.
yeah.
I thought that was so cool, and we don't have to worry about, you know, having an artist creating all this artwork and how do we do that and making a whole menuing system. Like it's just running the game engine with some very minimal menu interaction. Twisted 4, we had a dedicated menu system, but that's why that was a Twisted 3. I think the same thing with the remappings. I'm like, you know what? That's an awesome feature. I totally use that in Quake 2. I want this in these games because this is ultimately like a deathmatch style game, which Quake 2 is.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, it was low-key genius. Pedro had a good question I just saw. He said TM3 and TM4 are the only games in the franchise that have allies. Do you know who had that idea to add them in the game? The CPU ally?
Oh, God. I don't remember. I almost want to say that's another J thing because usually when there's some idea like this needs some replayability value, that felt J to me. Like the whole create a car thing in Twisted Metal 4, I want to say was a J thing.
Also genius.
I was heavily against it personally.
Oh, really? The create a car? Well, probably because it's such a huge endeavor, right? It's just.
Well, it was going to be a huge endeavor, and it came very late in the project. And I told them outright, I am not going to be working. I have so much shit I need to do.
Yeah.
I cannot be bothered to do any programming for that. Like, so if you guys can do it with our current framework, great.
Yeah.
But I'm doing nothing to help you guys put that together.
Yeah.
So that was all mostly on our the guy that was doing our menuing system, which was Matt Teitelbaum.
Wow. He killed it too. I think he did great.
He did it. Yeah, and I told him I think I had to advise him like, this is what the data needs to look like for the game to load it up basically once it gets in game. because once it got in game, that was all my codes, kind of, sort
Sure.
of putting that together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that thing you asked about was probably a J thing, if I had to guess.
Okay.
But yeah, was that. There's no way that was my idea. Was it? I don't think so. I don't know, but I remember like because we had to convince the AI guy, like, is this something you can do? Like,
Yeah.
but he said that yeah, actually, it kind of naturally falls out of how I have things set up. I can with minimal changes sort of add that as an ally. Just have him ignore you and
Yep.
go after the other cars instead.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I always thought the allies were fun. I mean, even as a kid, when I was bored just playing by myself, I'm like, okay, well, throw this other dude in here and it can just do an easier run through the tournament. Or
yeah,
nowadays, what we do is we make challenges out of it for fun. Like one of them is get through
mhm,
the entire tournament without your ally dying. Like, if your ally gets killed, then you have to restart the whole thing and you can do stuff. You can kind of create your own game out of it in a way.
yeah,
That wouldn't have
yeah,
been possible without that feature.
yeah.
I also saw that Nightmare posted the multi-tap did come out in November 22nd of 1995. So I was only 1 years old
Okay,
when that came out. That was a while ago.
Jesus.
That was a while
Well,
ago.
that was before I had my PlayStation 1. I started in Sony March 96. So yeah, we had that as a something like, hey, can we add some features to this? And then we had an early version of the DualShock. We had a
Hmm.
version of the DualShock that ended up not shipping. So
Oh.
actually, Rallycross supports a controller that doesn't exist, at
Oh
least as far
no.
as the consumer goes. But
Okay.
I think it automatically worked on the DualShock that did with these because controllers identify themselves with an ID code. Like,
Hmm.
hey, I am the ID code for the flight stick, or I'm an ID code for I don't know if you know the Negicon controller, the twisty controller. That thing was awesome. That
Yeah.
thing was the perfect
That
controller
thing
for
was
Rallycross.
crazy.
Yeah. And then this early prototype of the DualShock had a code that we were looking for, and we were using that code to determine, all right, do we do our DualShock detection and physics, whatever, for that.
Yeah.
But that code, I think, doesn't actually exist in a consumer shipped controller. Um, so that was kind of interesting.
Hmm.
But
That's
yeah,
yeah.
we would get sometimes early versions. Yeah, that multi-tech came out before I started working there, so I didn't get an early version of that. I'm curious if our office did. Like, what did an early version of that thing look like? Because
Right.
these
Quite
things
wonky.
often can look pretty rickety, you know?
Yeah. Just like the dev consoles. The dev consoles never look anything like the final product. They're always kind of crazy looking.
Oh, and the PlayStation 1 dev hardware was like a PCI card that plugged into the PC. Like, it wasn't even an
Whoa.
external box.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
How far we have come.
Oh,
Uh
totally.
Also,
Yeah.
Taylor, thank you for that $5 super chat. They're wondering. I'm wondering if you'd remember this, Buck, if you know. But do you know who picked the licensed tracks for Twist Metal 4?
Yeah, I'm gonna guess like most of the team probably did. I didn't, but for sure Jay, Julius Willis, probably had a say in that. Ken George probably had a say in that. Barry Pringle was one of the artists. I'm guessing he put forth a couple of tracks he was curious to
Hmm.
put out there. Um, yeah, I don't think I said anything because none of those tracks are anything that I was listening to other than the sort of Rob Zombie stuff.
Yeah, I gotcha. Well, cool. Yeah, because that's always
Yeah,
interesting to hear where that stuff came from. Because yeah, I don't think there's
yeah,
one bad song in TM4, in my opinion. I think they're all bangers.
it's
Um,
good stuff.
it
Yeah.
is. What was your favorite part of getting to work on Twist Metal 3 and Twist Metal 4?
Um, so for those of you that saw the rallycross talk, you see where the rallycross physics was um, about a car colliding with a 2D height map. So there was
Mm-hmm.
no 3D aspect of it. Like even though cars go up in the air and go over other cars that are driving under them, there is no version where there's like a tunnel that goes underneath and there's also a road above that tunnel that you're driving on top of. Like that wasn't possible because this was sort of like for every X, Y location of the map, there was a single Z height.
Mm-hmm.
But in Twisted Metal, we're like, no, we're not doing height map levels. We want to go over and under things and bridges and this shit. So I'm like, all right, I need to have like a basically what amounts to a watertight 3D mesh and have my physics system work within that. So just sort of figuring that out and also have it work out in such a way, like it's easy to detect if you're under a height map. It's like, all right, is my position less than a certain height value? That's easy to detect.
Yeah.
To detect if you've crossed over to the other side of a 3D mesh, that part's easy. Putting you back into a legal place that you're definitely back inside the 3D mesh is not trivial, like in areas where you have like corners. Because you might push back and then you slightly push yourself through a nearby edge. So, like, sort of figuring out like really weird edge cases that totally can happen with that was sort of an interesting math to work out and algorithm stuff to work out. So it's just sort of in working with a real 3D mesh and having my physics system reliably and robustly work with that to me was the most interesting thing about working on Twisted 3 um, from the previous games, and then just generally working on the Twisted Metal franchise. Like
Yeah.
before I worked at Sony and was a PlayStation 1 Twisted Metal 1 player,
Mm-hmm.
if you told me, oh, you'll be working on this franchise someday, I'm like, get the fuck out of here. You're crazy. That's not going to happen.
That would have been super cool. Probably insanely surreal as well. Because yeah, it's funny
Yeah.
because that's what Dave said too with his with Vigilante 8. He was the only
Yeah.
one, he said, that of the Luxo Flux team that actually played Twisted Metal. The other guys didn't
Mhm.
even know what it was. So it's
Oh,
cool to
wow.
hear that you guys were fans of the series before even getting to work on it. So that's super cool.
I'm
Um,
curious how much of the Lixoflex team know about. I mean, they had to have been the whole team that knew this. Like, it came from a PC game called Interstate 76.
yep, yep.
There was the guy that was the head of our studio before Jay became the head of our studio. Like, he was playing Interstate 76 all the freaking time. My cubicle was like 2 cubicles over from where his office door was. I could just constantly hear him firing the freaking machine gun on Interstate 76. And that's what Vigilante 8 eventually, was
Yeah,
developed from.
yeah.
So it's kind of funny that those two are kind of related games, because to me those two games are like, if you look at them side by side, you would never know like this came from that.
Right.
Um,
Right. That's awesome. Really want to play it. Yeah, I've
yeah,
never played Interstate 76 myself either, like Pepino. But
yeah,
I definitely want to check it out someday to see where V8, originated from, so to speak. Uh
yeah.
oh yeah, he brought up a good point. So, do you recall what happened to RAM damage with TM3, and then of course it really wasn't implemented much in TM4. I'm assuming, if I was to make a guess, it was because like in 2 and 1 it was kind of frustrating running into walls, you take damage, so you guys just decided not to implement that in 3.
Um, like general, like
So
no,
like
this is gonna
in
be like the
3 and
twist.
oh, sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was gonna say, like, I'm the Twisted Metal developer asking about Twisted Metal 1 and 2 rules. Like, was there RAM damage just generally between any two pairs of cars?
So yeah, so in Twisted Metal 1 it was way worse. It was, you could run into walls and actually kill you. Like, you could just hit a wall hard enough, it would take your life away, you die.
Yeah.
Same with, you could run into other
Okay.
vehicles and take damage as well. And then TM2, they still took damage hitting walls, but not nearly as bad. And
Hmm.
I don't believe you can actually die to it. But you can still
Hmm.
ram other vehicles and do a lot of damage as well. Axle was extremely broken. Like, you just run a vehicle over and kill them immediately. And then yeah,
Hmm.
going to 3, there is some ram damage. I know with like Hammerhead, for instance, her special weapon is a ram damage, but for the most part, yeah, there's no like ram damage to walls or collision or anything like that in 3 or 4 that I can recall.
Yeah. I mean, I'm speaking for the Jim Buck from 1998, but I don't know if I ever knew that there was general RAM damage other than the
Mm,
special. I
yeah,
did implement it for the special, but I don't think I ever implemented it for just general car to car or car to environment, because I don't think I knew about that.
sure.
At the time. So no, yeah, I would be surprised if I implemented it at all. Like, do you see any RAM damage, even if limited?
I believe there is a tiny bit. Like, if you, even if you're just like Spectre versus Roadkill, and you run into Spectre
Hmm.
at high enough speed, I believe you can take a little chunk of their health, but it's essentially minute. I mean, it barely does anything.
Wow, I don't remember implementing that, but if somebody implemented that, that would have been me. Maybe then if it's there and it's very dialed down, and I guess balancing, they decided, yeah, this needs to be a lot less than it is.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, if I was to make a Twisted Metal game, I guess the hardest thing is trying not to make it so easy that you can kill everybody in 5 seconds. You know, you want to have that little bit of give so you can have that cat and mouse, you know, running away, one person chasing aspect. And I feel like in Twist Metal 1 and 2, there's a lot of instances where you literally can kill someone in 2 hits because of the ram damage plus hitting them with a power missile or whatever. So I would, yeah, if I had like a special weapon like Hammerhead, where it's a monster truck, I would want that car to have the ram damage with their special only, and then everybody else not really take it, even though it's not realistic. But I think Twisted Metal has always been more arcade, you know, than going for realism in that aspect. So I can understand that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Thank you again, Madman, for the $5 super chat. We should get a crossover game like Marvel versus Capcom, but it's Twisted Metal versus Vigilante 8. That would be pretty dope. I'd play it.
Again, I am available for contract hire. I could put a team together if need be. If somebody wants to, you know, hire a team to do some Twisted Metal oriented game. I heard there was a Twisted Metal game being made for season 2, and then they closed down that studio. So I assume there's possibly a gap there.
That there definitely is. And my cope thoughts, I guess, hopes and dreams right now is that Sony took what was it, Fire Sprite, I think was making the TM game that got canceled. Absolutely. I'm hoping they took people from Fire Sprite and they have them secretly working on a remake of one of the games, like whether it's a remake of a reboot of Twist Metal, the first game, or maybe they're remaking one that was really popular like Black or TM2. You know, I think bringing that back with a new engine, new physics, maybe multiplayer as well, servers, you know, I think that would sell really well, even if it's not a full-fledged brand new Twisted Metal game. I think that's the call. But hopefully, yeah, if they are, hopefully they'll call you up, because I think that'd be kind of smart for them to do.
Totally. Yeah. That'd be awesome.
In Twist Metal 4, so in Twist Metal 4, were there any environmental weapon ideas that you had that you wanted to add that just couldn't add by the end of the game's development? Like kind of like in the crane, you know, in the first level, there really isn't anything else like that in the entire game. It's that's like kind of the main environmental, where in TM3 you had a couple levels of environmental attacks.
Not that I can recall. I'm the one that implemented the crane and figured out I implemented all the systems to even make that possible. And I think that required a lot of development time. And I think maybe we realized, like, shit, if we have to do this for every crazy thing in a level like this, maybe this isn't the way to go.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So, or I don't know, because I wasn't coming up with these ideas for the levels. So maybe the other guys that were coming up with those ideas didn't really have anything else for the other levels, or they were just busy with whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
But definitely yeah, I can't think of any. I'm just trying to think through the levels of Twisted Metal 4, and nothing's coming out at me as something that we wanted to do but didn't. The only thing, I mean, I have the Twisted Metal 3 thing. This came up in the Discord server because somebody discovered the hidden feature. The oil rig level, you could trigger like a destruction sequence that parts of the levels start disappearing because they blow up. You destroy the drill bit, and then like the bridge goes away, this other bridge goes away, this other part goes away. Like the sort of like the idea at the time was, could we at some point during the level change the layout of this level, you know, through some kind of destruction?
Right.
So we thought of this, you know, well, maybe doing something starts things getting blown up. So I thought of this destruction sequence. So I spent a lot of time implementing that and the systems that went along with that. And it came a little bit late in the project, unfortunately. So we decided it was a little risky to ship with this. Let's disable this. And yeah, too bad we couldn't ship with that. So I commented out that code. But because there's somebody from my team, I suppose, had a beta disk that they uploaded to the internet.
Yep.
There is a version of the game out there with that code compiled in there
Yep.
and the necessary data in there. And I think it was Pedro that uncovered it.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Pager was the one who
and
first implemented in the mod. Yeah.
yeah, because somebody was, maybe it was you playing, somebody was playing it, and then they just suddenly saw the bridge was gone. They're like, "What the fuck?" And then I think somebody alerted me to this,
That might have been me.
and
I don't
I'm
remember.
like, "All right, that's a glitch." Because in my mind, I was thinking, well, I know I have that destruction sequence thing, but I mean,
Hmm.
that was never put into a code base that could be out there in the world. No way. So it didn't even occur to me. But
Yeah.
then when I think somebody discovered, well, killing this drill bit, look at now this thing just blew up. I'm like, holy
Hmm.
shit, that is that feature. How is that out there? Oh my
Yeah.
god. Um, so that was cool that somebody was able to sort of get that alive and kicking, and like a feature that was, you know, terminated to not see the light of day has seen the light of the day dozens of years later. That was
Right.
like my mind. I told a bunch of people this story afterwards. I'm like, you believe that cool thing I did that got canceled? It's there. It's there. Look at the video.
That's so cool. And it's, it just
Yeah.
kind of goes to show that it's not, I think with Sony, I remember talking about this with you a while ago with, releasing those unbuild or unfinished builds of the game. Sony might go down the legal route of like saying, you can't do that. You can't release this unfinished product from 30 years ago or whatever. But I,
Hmm.
the thing is, like, no one's trying to re-release the game and make profit off these alpha discs. No one's selling it on eBay to make a profit. It's just
Hmm.
to let the community kind of see where these came from, and obviously to see these unfinished things that could have made it to the final build, to kind of
Hmm.
resurrect them, if you will. It's sad that we can't have more of that, right? Think of all the things. I'm sure there was early concepts of TM3, like that beta build of Egypt, for instance. I would love to be able to play that early version of Egypt, in that big wide open expansion with the river and all that stuff. So
Yep.
it's sad that we can't do that, until maybe one day Sony just says, we don't care anymore. But I don't know if that'll ever
Well,
happen.
no. I have the answer to this mystery. I was told this answer long ago, and it totally made sense.
Hmm.
The problem is the legal system.
Yeah,
Is it? I forget if it's trademark. It might be trademark. So
probably.
if you do not have a history of defending your trademark,
No.
and then comes a time where now you really want to defend something, comes out that like, oh, we want to go after that one, we didn't go after the other six things, this one we're scared of, we're going after this one.
Hmm.
uh they can smack you down, say, look, you're going after this one, but you didn't go after the other six. I'm sorry, this isn't in good faith. Sorry, rule against you. They have to have a history of rigorously defending their IP, even if
Mm.
they know it's bullshit. Even if they know we don't want to spend the money to defend this, they have to, because someday it might, and it probably will matter. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, in this case, Twisted Metal TV series.
Yeah.
Like, if people were releasing Twisted Metal games in 2010, just because, oh, nobody's buying these anymore, let's just release them into the wild. Well, it would have made them harder, I think, to greenlight making a Twisted Metal TV show, because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
want full IP ownership and everything like that.
Right.
So I do understand that if that's the way the legal system works, is that you have to have this history of defending the
Yeah.
IP. If that is true, which it sounds like it is, then I can totally understand this and can't poo-poo them for that reason. But that's
Right.
why I'm surprised, although I haven't looked recently. There was that guy that used his racing slash car combat engine to insert Twisted Metal 4 assets into, and have basically a
Yeah, I
Twisted
did
Metal
see
4
that.
in.
Y-
Like,
Yeah.
he like mailed all sorts of people at Sony to see if they could get a deal going. Like, I don't know how, either Sony doesn't realize it's out there or something, but like, I just felt what he put out there would get the Twisted Metal Sony banhammer of death upon him.
Yeah, because I think I remember him saying that he reached out to a ton of different executives or
Yep.
tried to with Sony. Yeah, and it's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. It almost makes you wonder if he's lying. Did he actually reach out to these people? Because I feel like if he did, wouldn't, yeah, like you said, wouldn't they just come crashing down on him and be like, no, You can't do
I
that?
mean, he and I exchanged a couple emails. He sent me the list of people he had mailed because I was curious if it was anybody I knew or what roles they had.
Yeah.
And he sent me an image of like the pile of discs he burned that he mailed to them. So it seemed legit.
Okay.
But I'm curious if that YouTube video he put out still exists or not. Um,
I think it is. Yeah, I just watched it just the other day. I think it's still out there. So
and that's to me that's absolutely amazing because these companies, especially Sony, are super sensitive about that stuff. I mean,
yeah,
Disney for sure. Um, that I don't know how Sony hasn't like just smashed that down. I mean, if not, if they know about it and they're like, ah, whatever. Like, okay, that's
yeah,
awesome. That's cool. I want to work on a car combat game. I mean, I'm kind of slowly on the side working with a former Twisted Metal team member on a
yeah.
car combat game, but I'm also always in the back of my head thinking, gonna get a letter from a Sony lawyer saying you're a former car combat developer that we paid cease and desist. Like, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know. Would they have a case? Like, I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like if you're not using assets, I mean, from the previous game, you're not calling it Twisted Metal or whatever. I don't think they would have
Yeah,
I don't. The only thing they would have on you is if you worked for them, maybe they would threaten to like let you go, possibly. But the only thing that
oh,
would be the
for
only thing I
sure.
could think of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Otherwise, yeah.
yeah. This conversation has come up at Amazon Games because Amazon Games has something like that. It's like you need to, when we're
Mm-hmm.
hiring you, you need to pre-declare projects you're on.
Yep.
And when you want to work on a project on the side, you have to tell us what it is, and we'll tell you if it's okay.
Yep.
And I kind of ask people, well, what are the repercussions if you don't? Like, do they automatically own it? It sounds like they don't,
Hmm.
but they can terminate your position. And I'm
Right.
like, well, if you're so successful with that project that they actually heard about it and
Mm-hmm.
heard about enough to terminate you, it means you're doing good with that side project. So maybe good that you don't have that job anymore. You can just do that thing full time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it'd be the same with Sony. Like I don't know. I'm kind of curious about some of that stuff.
Yeah. Hard to say unless we can get somebody legal from Sony to be here and answer all those, right? Maybe one day. That'd be
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
These next few questions, I'm just gonna kind of like rapid fire them at you because they're pretty easy.
sure.
Who is your favorite character from Twisted Metal 3?
Oh God. Um, I was always playing as but I think that's only because that was car we had pretty early on. Um, so I just kind of stuck with it. But I would say maybe overall Firestarter. I
Firestarter.
dug
Okay. Yeah.
I dug the car design was cool, the old sort of roadster style. I dug the weapon, was pretty cool. Um, I thought it was kind of funny that the character is just a redo of the guy from Prodigy,
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
Firestarter song
Yep.
that was Barry Pringle that designed that character, and he's a big Prodigy fan. So he's like, I'm just gonna basically take that singer and just kind of make him the character essentially. So
That's
if you
awesome.
look at those guys, they look very similar, and that's not by accident.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and the hot rod is cool. It's funny. The reason I'm laughing a little bit is because like I'm a certified like Firestarter hater, but only because not because of the
Oh,
design or anything, but just because for some reason I think it's just a placebo. But his AI in the game is the number one that always goes for stealing your heals. He always steals my heals.
mhm,
So it's a
mhm.
it's an inside joke in the channel that like I hate Firestarter, but that's the only reason.
Oh man.
Otherwise, I do agree. I think his design is one of the best in the game. Next to Club Kid, I think is my favorite design.
I mean, I don't know if there's anything programmed specifically for him.
It might
Trying to
have
think how you could be.
just bad luck.
That's interesting. I haven't had contact with the AI programmer in a few years, but it'd be fun to get him in like one of these live streams.
Yeah.
Like I assume he probably remembers his code and probably could answer to that.
If you can
Um,
if you want to send him an invite, to the Twist Metal Federation Discord, by all means, like I would love to talk to him because I'm sure a lot of people would have questions for him if he'd be down.
I don't think he'd be down. He's more recluse than not, so I don't think he would do that at all.
That's
I
fair.
barely
Yeah.
got the artist Nick into it, and I think he's already since left. So I don't. He was he
It's
would
a
have been the one
lot.
that was most open.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lot. I understand. It's a
yeah,
lot of pings and stuff too. If you don't use Discord very
yeah,
often, it's kind of confusing too, because like
Yeah.
I only recently got into Discord maybe 4 years ago, so
Hmm.
it was very overwhelming the first time I tried to figure it out and look at all the channels. And now that the community, the Discord is as big as it is with so many people with so many channels, yeah, overwhelming is definitely a one of the biggest things for people who
Yeah.
are not used to Discord for sure. So I get that.
Yeah. It was for me, but I use it mostly for organizing the bands I'm in, so I'm used to its,
Sure.
idiosyncrasies and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Um. Oh, so the next one here. What's your favorite level? Or sorry, I skipped one. What's your favorite character from Twist 104?
Um, let me think through. God, I have to like freaking Google the characters.
There's
Twist
a
Metal.
lot in TM4. I think it's actually the biggest
Yeah,
roster in the series, if I remember right, for one game.
I'm just trying to, because usually it's the one I mostly played with. Pizza Boy was pretty cool, but that's not the one. What was the one I was usually like? I would usually do all my testing with a particular character, and it's usually one of the first cars that came online. Um,
Maybe Orbital, I would assume. Would have been one of the first cars.
Orbital. Yeah, yeah, Orbital. That's the one
Yeah,
I'm thinking of.
yeah. A lot. He's a
Yeah,
fan
'cause,
favorite. A lot of people like Orbital.
well, he had the advantage of like he was also the first car I was getting working with all the cool car effects, the dynamic lightings,
Hmm.
the reflect, the kind of the specular lighting and all that stuff. So the
Yeah.
reflectivity. He was a very rounded kind of car, so
Hmm.
he was a good one to start with. So yeah, I would probably say him. He was the one I was using the most.
Good choice.
Um,
Because yeah,
yeah.
Orbital's fun. He's fast. He's got some of the best handling. His special weapon's cool. With the freeze bomb
Hmm.
thing that sucks people into it. I always thought it was really cool how in the original idea of him in the beta builds, it was a teleporter, which makes
Hmm.
sense with his name. But like, I'm assuming that got changed because of the fact that like it didn't do anything really. It just kind of would hyperspace someone away from you, which isn't
Hmm.
that like what's the word? It's just not that like interactive for the player. They can't really fight him. You
Yeah.
just get him away from you, kind of.
Yeah, I don't recall the reason for doing one versus the other,
Hmm.
but that would make sense. The balancing or wasn't that interesting, or maybe the one was placeholder since we already had teleporters working. Can we have a
Oh,
moving teleporter thing? But I don't know. I don't.
definitely could have been placeholder for sure. Do you recall a
Yeah.
favorite level from Twisted Metal 3 and Twisted Metal 4?
Twisted Forge, definitely the junkyard. Again, that's where I spent most of my time. That's where I was getting all sorts of crazy stuff working, like
Yeah.
um, the crane, but even stuff like getting fire effects working, like on the green goo areas. When you launch a napalm, this fire ring spreads out.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool. Um, Also, I just generally like the feel of the level. Was pretty cool. Twisted 3, maybe Hollywood.
Oh, okay. The first level.
I liked Hollywood a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of
I
underrated.
I'm not as. I mean, yeah. It's pretty small. And I think it was one of the first ones developed.
Hmm.
Um, some of the later levels I don't know too well because they came on very far into the project, and I was just using the levels I was used to for doing my work.
Sure.
Um, so I'm not as familiar with some of the other, like I think Minions Maze is one of them. I barely know it. Amazonia, I think, is one of them, or Egypt, whatever it is. Don't know it too well.
Hmm.
Carnival, I kind of know a little bit well because there was some weird shit in there I needed to get going, like the roller coaster,
Yeah.
like the pathing stuff. So the roller coaster, the train in Neon City, the helicopter in the oil rig.
Hmm.
This was all stuff I needed to get going because this was like the specific technology that like we didn't have. So just like, can we get some object that follows a path that the artist creates? Um, and how do we do that? And can they be blown up? That's another thing. Like we don't really have much else that blows up other than the cars and a couple places that you can shoot a wall. Can we get other objects to also blow up? So that was like another sort of piece of tech I had to get working.
Right.
Um, so yeah, um, but Neon City also was a pretty close favorite of mine as well. That was the
Oh
one I
yeah.
felt uh, spent a fair bit of time.
Yeah, I
getting
feel
those
like
jump pads working, that was the level for that one. So
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, there's so many good maps, I think, in both games. A lot of people crap on TM3 for bad maps, but the only
Mhm,
one in there that I really despise is Egypt. I think even DC is fine. It's the same thing as Holland from TM2, so I don't get why people
mhm.
give Holland a pass, but TM3 it sucks. It's just like, yeah, choose a side, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
Angel, thank you for the $2 super chat. They said, were there any scrapped endings for bosses in Twist Metal 4 that you can recall?
I don't think so. You mean like at one point maybe we had them as playable and then we decided not to have them as playable, but we still had endings for them because they were already created? Yeah, I don't think we had anything like that. Was Minion
So,
playable? Because I want to say there was a Minion ending, but I don't know for sure.
So in Twist Metal
Mm.
3, yes, Minion
Or
does
even
have an
thinking of
ending.
three.
And
Yeah,
Darkseid and Primeval were taken out from the game before release, so you had to use a cheat
yeah,
code to or like a game shark in order to play those characters that do
yeah,
not have endings. But Angel's
mhm.
asking about TM4, which the
Yeah. I
bosses in
don't.
TM4 are playable in game. You just have to beat the game once and then save
Yeah, I
it, and
don't
then
think
you.
we didn't do any endings for those guys. I
Mm,
think the endings that we did just came in the nick of time as it was. Never mind, give those guys more because we actually outsourced those videos.
yeah, that's
Um,
right. Yeah.
yeah, to Visionscape Interactive here in San Diego.
Hmm.
Um,
It's
so that's why,
interesting.
yeah,
Their little what do you call it? Their old logo was one of the clowns they used for the Sweet Tooth's little helpers in TM4.
yeah. Well, those guys were always kind of reusing assets. Like they owned assets and then they would just sort of reuse them for other things. I remember them like constantly saying like because I actually did some contract work for them for a while when I was on my own, and I knew those guys pretty well. I socialized with the company owners many years later, but
Wow.
yeah, they were all about like, yeah, man, we did all this work for this company and they didn't ship it. Like, yeah, we could just reuse this stuff or whatever. Like, they were always about just like having this junkyard of content they created and sort of trying to repurpose it for other things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
They were
that's
just churning out so much work.
right. And at least they got it done in time, with your guys' crunch and everything, especially for 3. It's kind of crazy they were able to get those
Yeah.
done. Oh, Mortimer, welcome. And he says, as far as I know, Jim Buck said in a 1999 interview with GameFAQ, user that, the bosses being added as playable were a last minute addition. In fact, he said it was so last minute, they didn't have time to send the art to the 3D animation studio to get BIOS and or endings made, so they just left them as is.
Believe that Jim Buck. That Jim Buck was much more informed.
I mean, that makes the
he
most
had
sense too.
he had that information super fresh.
Yeah, that was
Um,
just yesterday at that point.
yeah, I remember that fact he was talking about. That was like an email back and forth between me and the guy that wrote that fact.
Hmm.
So yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
Do you have a favorite ending slash story from Twist Metal 3 and Twist Metal 4?
Um, none that I can think of because they were just for me goofy. I wasn't really on
That's
top
fair.
of those endings so much. I mean, I just remember just because it's my example of how goofy it got when somebody wanted to know that the I think it was the augur character, like he
Mm.
wanted to find his inner child, and then didn't wasn't his wish granted? Like they shrunk him down to a baby or something like that.
Yeah.
Like God damn it,
And what's funny,
why?
it had nothing to do with his original reason to be in the contest. And it didn't match the
Yeah, yeah.
bio screen. So I was like, where'd that come from?
Oh well, that so yeah. That's a when you outsource a lot of this art stuff.
Yeah.
There will end up being a mismatch between yeah text written in those things, or even like because I think in those where the text was written there was also like capabilities like speed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, that shit's totally gonna change. Those like numbers like as far as capabilities goes, those are gonna absolutely change.
Right.
Um, it's kind of weird. I think we were just given final images, so it's not even like we were given some kind of Photoshop file that we could adjust as needed,
Hmm.
which would have been nice. which I think if we were to do that now, we would absolutely demand, like, give us PSD files so we can, this car is now faster. I want to add another icon to it, so it's 4 out of 5 instead of 3 out of 5.
Right. Oh, it looks like he
Yeah.
posted another answer you gave in 1999 to GameFAQ.
Oh, okay.
So they asked, why did you not include, at bare minimum, the stats for the bosses that you get once you beat the game? The pictures can be simply unavailable. And you answered, the addition of boss accessibility was a last-minute thing, and there was no time to go back to the company giving us the front-end artwork to get additional screens for the bosses. And that's kind of what,
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny they asked that kind of twice, because, I mean, to me, it's pretty obvious there's a reason why it wasn't. And it's not like you guys were just lazy. Like, we don't want it in there. It's just time.
Yeah, I mean, you're outsourcing to a company that has their own schedule. They're not just working on your project; they're working on projects for multiple companies, and it's like, hey, we got 4 or 5 more screens we want you to do. They're gonna be, you're shit out of luck, man. We're already working on this Electronic Arts thing, man. Hit us next year.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
and Mortimer says, tell Jim I admire him. I really do, and that I love hearing him and his knowledge.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Was there anything major that was cut from Twist Metal 3 and or Twist Metal 4 that you wish could have stayed in the final product? Obviously, we went over the oil rig one, was a pretty cool like cut thing from TM4, but is there anything else you can think of?
The thing that sucked to cut officially from TM3 and then like just technically from TM4 was the link cable support. It's hidden in TM3, but it's not front and center. That sucked.
Oh.
And then that we just commented out the code entirely in Twisted Metal 4. That really was that hurt. That hurt a lot. The problem was I ran into initially. I was the one that was responsible for it. When we upgraded to a new version of the Sony libraries that we were using, what I was told in the manuals for determining when a disconnect was happening with the cable, there's a certain signal you're supposed to check for. And when that would happen, I would bring up a pause menu, let you resolve the disconnection, and you'd be able to unpause right back into the game as it already was playing.
Yeah.
This way, if some dumbass runs through the living room and whacks the cable, you don't lose the game.
Yeah.
So once we upgraded to a new version of library, I was getting this signal of disconnection, even when there was no disconnection.
Oh.
I tried everything I could to figure out what was going on here, and I couldn't donate a lot of time. I just had to work on Twisted Metal 3. I had to get the engine working, everything working for Twisted Metal 3. Never mind revisiting this code that was working in Kart World Series and Rallycross, no problem. And it was only happening on a built, like a disk burn. Like, it was working fine on my dev kit, but it was not working fine once we burned a gold master. So I couldn't even test this like in a debugger or anything like that. I just had to burn a gold master twice because they needed 1 and 2 machines, make a guess at what it could be, and they tell me if it still brings up the pause menu because of the bullshit not true disconnect.
Yeah.
And after a certain number of rounds that we're like, all right, we're just gonna screw it. We're not gonna do it anymore. What we'll do is we'll keep it as a hidden feature. We won't officially advertise it. We'll only bring up the option if you have the link cable connecting 2 consoles, because I can detect that. And then it will bring up at a certain point, do you want to use the link cable? And if you say yes, then it will start up a game between the 2 consoles.
Right.
Twisted Metal 4, we're like, do we have time to revisit this? I'm like, I want to, but no, we don't. They're like, all right, can we just buy back some RAM by just commenting out the code? I'm like, we absolutely would buy some RAM. Like, it's only 2 megabytes of memory on the PlayStation. So actually that was valuable memory to do some additional stuff with. So yeah. 3.5 megabytes total when you add in VRAM and sound RAM. So not a lot. One megabyte of VRAM and a half a megabyte of sound RAM.
That is crazy how far we've come now since then. Wow.
Yeah. That's why 80 triangles and quads for cars for Twisted Metal 4.
Yeah. And they made it work, you know? You had to work with what he had. Oh my god. Let's see. So this was actually when I was talking to Kevin Bunting a couple months ago. He brought this up and he told me to ask you about this if you recalled anything about it, but he claims he he does remember it, but he just didn't want to give it away yet. So I'm curious if you know anything about
Oh,
this. He stated
sure.
that there is a now he didn't say, by the way, if it's in the final build or if it was a beta thing, but he said there was a secret car in Twisted Metal 4. Do you recall anything about that or remember anything about that?
Secret car.
That's all he
No.
gave me. He didn't give me anything else. He just said there's a secret car in Twisted Metal 4. But again, I don't know if he meant that it's in the final build somewhere or if it's in a beta. I'm not sure. But he said that you might remember it.
I wonder if he's talking about the guy that did the AI programming owned a Porsche, like a very old Porsche, like borderline piece of shit. And then he bought a BMW. Right? Yeah, he bought a BMW, and he wanted to get rid of his Porsche. Kevin was very interested in buying this Porsche, so he bought this Porsche. Did we model that Porsche and put it in the game at one point just for fun? I wonder. I I'm leaning toward it might be that. I have some vague recollection of that, but I could totally be wrong. So I don't know for sure what he's talking about. I don't know if anything shipped with the game though.
Okay.
I would be surprised about. We were usually pretty good about cleanliness with what we get put on the disc. If it doesn't get used, it doesn't go on the disc. We were
Right.
pretty particular about that.
Right.
So I'd be very shocked if that ended up on a build.
Wow. Well, maybe
Yeah,
it's in
that's
one
my
of the
guess.
betas. You know, maybe it was like a super early beta thing and they removed it, and that's what he was talking about. Pedro said
Maybe.
he tried a lot to find that car, so he must have told Pedro too.
Hmm.
But if Pedro couldn't find it, I'm assuming it's not in the final game. And if it's not there,
I mean, all the cars are separate files on the disc. So
yeah,
if it's a car that he's talking about that actually is there, it would have a corresponding file on the disc. And if you don't see anything like that, then it's not there.
yeah,
So yeah, no, I'm curious.
yeah, same. We'll have to get him on here sometime soon, and I'll have to pick his brain a
Yeah,
little bit more on that. Um,
totally.
if you were given all the time in the world, like just like no crunch time, you could take years and years to remake Twisted Metal 3 or Twisted Metal 4, what major things would you have wanted to make happen before releasing the final product?
Um, like,
Or it could be just like one thing, like one major
but
thing
still
that you
releasing on PS1 or just releasing on modern.
let's say PS1, because the way I guess I worded it was that like if you
Yeah,
could go back in time and you didn't have crunch at all, there was no time limit, and it had to be on the PS1. What's like one major thing like for 3 and 4 that you wish you could have like implemented or
I
got
would have.
perfect?
I mean, if it's just one thing, I wish I had the turbo effect for Twisted Metal 3. I had just a
Mm,
temporary placeholder thing that was never meant to ship like that, but there was no time. Generally, though, I would have loved for Twisted Metal 3 to have all the tech we put in Twisted Metal 4, like all the
sure.
dynamic lighting and the turbo, better physics. Like, I would love for Twisted Metal 3 to have all that tech, and that would have been the version we shipped for Twisted 3, and then
Sure.
Twisted Metal 4 would have been even whatever additional tech we added there. Twisted 4, I do wish we could have shipped that the destruction sequence thing in Oil Rig. That's the only major regret I have, I think, with Twisted 4 that didn't quite make it.
Okay.
Otherwise, everything that I worked on shipped in that game. I didn't scrap anything that I worked on.
Awesome. What?
Um,
I mean, that's kind of a
yeah,
good thing.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, most of the stuff ends. I mean, a lot of the artwork is ended on the cutting room floor. I mean,
Yeah.
you saw that PlayStation Museum video. I mean, there's environments and there's cars in there that are not in Twisted Metal 3 that shipped.
Yep.
Um, but yeah,
The the one thing that was really interesting too is that TM3 is the only game other than TM1 that just didn't have power-ups in the beginning at all. But it's the only game in the series that doesn't have a shield. Was there I think I remember asking this before in the Discord, and I think you told me it was just due to time. You guys didn't have time to implement the shield effect.
yeah, there was just no time. I mean, anything that we took away from Twisted Metal 2 was more we didn't have time to add that to our code base that didn't already have that.
Right.
I'm trying to remember what the shield effect is, like this gold reflective thing in Twisted 4. Is that what I have for
Yeah,
that?
it's basically it just makes you invincible for like 5 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did, in order to have done, like, I think in Twisted Metal 1 2, it's just a sprite that's like a half bubble or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't doing anything like that for any kind of tech. So by the time I had the tech for Shield, like, we didn't have any sort of reflection stuff for tech in Twisted 3. So I wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to, if we did a Shield, it would have had to have been a different thing altogether. I don't know. Maybe something like I did for the Frozen effect, where I just dynamically color the polygons.
Oh,
Something. I don't.
yeah. Kind of like because I think TM2 is like a green bubble. So maybe you could just like not
Yeah,
a bubble, but maybe just turn the car green or something for a few seconds or gold or something.
something.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have. Yeah, I mean, since we were wholesale coloring the car for lighting
Mm-hmm.
anyway, it could have been, an RGB value that was not white.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's interesting because it's funny too to me. I've talked about this before on stream where yeah, I understand why people are upset with 3 not having a shield because it is a pretty like integral kind of like I don't know, part of Twisted Metal where it's more of a an asset to the player to be able to shield because the enemies can use it too. But the fact that
Mhm.
enemies don't have shields in TM3 and you also don't have a shield in TM3, I think it kind of opens up the floor to be a little bit more challenging, I guess, if that makes sense. You have
Mhm.
to rely more on dodging missiles than actually just sitting there and typing in a code to put a shield up for a second. And I kind of
Mhm.
prefer that type of gameplay personally. I like being able to dodge weapons or dodge, homing missiles and stuff where in the other games it feels like homing missiles don't miss at all. There's no way to really dodge them because they're so accurate. So
Mhm.
I don't know. If it was me, I know it's a hot take. I don't think anybody's gonna agree with me on this, but I feel like if it was a new Twisted Metal, don't put a shield in there and just allow the physics and the driving mechanics to be good enough to where you can actually dodge missiles and get good at the game to do that. Because
Yeah.
that's what I prefer personally. But I understand that for time constraints, that was the only reason it wasn't put in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Totally.
No freeze missiles as well. Oh, now we're getting on some crazy hot takes. All right. No, I
Wait,
get
what?
that. Snitch is saying maybe no freeze missiles as well.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I feel like freezing is. I definitely agree it's annoying when it happens to you as the player, but I also
Mhm.
feel it'd be really weird if you were the only one that could freeze and like the enemies couldn't do that at all. So
Mhm.
I would say yeah, either keep it or get rid of it entirely. But I would feel it would be a huge loss not have any way to freeze enemies, especially if you're playing a character like Mr. Slam or something. Not being able to
Mhm.
freeze somebody would just be horrible. It'd be so bad to try to grab somebody with them moving constantly.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Totally.
um, of course, personal biases aside, what is your favorite Twisted Metal in the series and why?
Black.
Twisted Metal Black. Yeah, I kind of already knew the
Black.
answer though.
Yeah. No, I loved the design of the cars, the levels. It was very smooth, liquid smooth graphically.
Hmm.
I loved all the dynamic colored lighting they had done with that. I loved the darkness. The music was awesome. The stories were pretty cool, even though I'm not normally a sucker for stories. I did love the full movie that they did for that with Paint It Black. That was awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
That was just absolutely beyond amazing. Um, like I Twisted Metal 3 probably has the best intro movie on PlayStation 1, but I think Twisted Metal Black has that best video on PS2.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, definitely Black hands down.
Understandable, and I agree. I think Black is the best in the series. I've always kind of gone back and forth between a couple of them, but yeah, Black is the one I
Yeah.
always come back to. It just feels the most polished, I guess, or finished of the series in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Yeah, the gameplay is just top notch for sure. Uh, we're actually at the bottom of my list. The last question that I had written up, and then we'll get into more chat questions, I suppose, before we end it out. Um,
Yeah, I don't have a ton more time, but I could probably go to Quarter After.
Perfect. Yeah, so that works for me
Yeah,
perfectly. So yeah.
yeah.
This one is kind of more of just in the the landscape of AI and stuff happening nowadays. I'm curious to hear as a developer yourself who's still working in the gaming industry, what is your
Hmm.
opinion on like chat GPT using for coding and stuff where, you had to do it the old school way of learning it from scratch and coding with mathematical stuff, but now with chat GPT you can kind of, anybody can do it just by typing in a prompt and then it can kind of code stuff for you. Do you look at it more of a tool and you think it's awesome and people should be using it more often, or do you look at it more of a it's kind of scary and it's kind of coming for your jobs kind of thing?
Where's that fucking bottle of wine?
Because I'm really curious to hear your take on this one.
No, I have a super hot take. I am very much against it. It's a
Okay.
scourge. There's repercussions that we will be reaping from this. So you have people like Zuckerberg that are saying, "Oh, in 1 year, 95% of the code will be written by AI." At Facebook, you have Envisionaries putting out these like sound bites, and then as a result, you have companies making hiring decisions based on those sound bites that may or may not pan out. Like, wait till see if fucking 95% of the code was written by AI before, reducing your headcount needs, and I don't mean Facebook. I mean any companies that are sort of listening to people like that to make their own hiring decisions.
Right.
Now, so the other thing is, so if companies are making hiring decisions where they're going to hire less people because AI is going to do all the work, universities are going to have less motivation to have coursework along these lines. In fact, they'll have more motivation to have coursework to teach to be an AI prompt engineer. So it'll be a while, it'll be a generation or two, but there will be a generation coming that has no idea how to debug the code that would be running our infrastructure, and not just games, but like fucking our utilities and the nuclear missiles and the other shit, like everything, the lights, whatever, and if there's a problem that happens, like, you're not going to be able to debug it. Well, I'll ask ChatGPT. Well, it might be able to tell you and it might not, but I want a human that has the brain that can sort of think outside the box. And think about ChatGPT. It can only know what it's been trained on. It can't do anything like next level innovative. Like the human brain it's been trained on certain things, but it can now advance it to something that was not obvious based on those things. Or a summary of those things. Like the human brain can make this leap. So there will be a day that we won't have programmers to fix the bugs. And to me, that's scary as hell. Like, I don't want to live in already now, most of coding is pretty bad. Like very bad, like very scarily bad. Never mind people that literally don't know how to program, or vibe coding, as some of this shit's called. That like, I just want to burn my eyeballs out. So yeah, I'm very much against it. I don't use it. I don't plan to ever use it. I'm told by people that like using it, they're like, well, you're going to need to be competitive. And I'm like, you know what? I think by the time I no longer can be competitive is the time I'll be retiring. So I'll just be able to scoot out on having to worry about that part.
Sure.
That said, I was looking at I did apply recently for a job role at Adobe, and I saw another role at Adobe where they wanted somebody that actually, part of the job description was, you're using ChatGPT and other LLM models to, do your work. Like, really? That's now a job requirement?
Wow, they want you to be able to know how to use that. Okay.
Like, I'm like, let the expert use the tools that he feels he needs to use to do his expertise work.
Sure.
Don't demand the work, the tools they're using.
That's weird. So, Adobe moment. That's
Yeah, so I am not happy about this because the company I had worked at previously, everybody was chomping at the bit, like, to get the company to approve use of this. And there was a couple of the old timers that are like, yeah, this will be great to use this. And those guys I trust, because those guys I know for a fact will take the output and will totally inspect the code. And they know what to look for. They know where the bugs are. They know they'll spot a bug when they see it. Oh, ChatGPT doesn't know what the fuck it's talking about here. It's the other mother effers I don't trust. The guys that are really just doing this to shortcut their work. They're going to take the output of ChatGPT, put it in the system, and just assume it works, and that's it. They're learning nothing. They're putting risky code into the system. They probably don't even know how to debug the code that ChatGPT put out. They're just going to assume it worked. Because they don't know what otherwise not working code looks like. Or they ran it a few times. Well, it worked in the few cases I tried. It's not going to work on all of them, though, and they don't know what to look for the edge cases. So those are the ones that scare me. They're just looking to multiply their output but putting out a very crappy quality. And these companies are kind of optimized toward, you know, how much impact you have, how much output you have. And on paper, these guys that put out a lot of code look good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you put out a lot of systems and a lot of people are using your systems. Never mind, 3 years from now, this is going to come crashing down in a significant way that wouldn't have happened if you had a guy that really knows their shit write this code. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
so yeah, that's my hot take on it.
I honestly, I
um,
feel like it's the take to have. Personally, I agree. Like the fact that people are trying to say, "Oh, it's okay because it's a tool. You're using it as a tool,
mhm,
just like you use autocorrect, spell check or whatever. Like it's a tool." But in reality,
mhm,
yeah, but it's so advanced that I feel like people like you're showing with Adobe, right? They're taking people's jobs that are from people who actually know what they're doing. They know the code and
mhm.
how to code properly, and be like, "No, we don't want that person. We want somebody who knows how to write prompts like well in chat gpt, and it'll do all the rest for you." So to
Yeah.
me, it's kind of like I get that argument of, yeah, you can use it as a tool, and I don't think that's necessarily inaccurate, but
Mhm.
obviously the big corpo people are going to take that to the ninth level, and they're just going to try to wipe out everybody that knows what they're doing because they're more expensive, and they're going to pay these like lower end
Yeah.
people that just know how to write prompts and use chat gpt for you know and like you said, it's not something that is perfect. It's not something that creates things out of thin air. It's only what you throw into the machine to learn. So yeah, it's never going to be as good as a human mind in terms of creativity and coming up with new processes. It's going to take something that somebody already did years and years ago or months ago, who knows. And I just feel like it's stealing in a lot of ways, and it's not fair. So we have amazing people in the community, like Angel, for instance. And I read his comment just now where he was using ChatGPT to create his fan game, Twist Metal 5. And it's what
Mhm.
got him into coding. But he said it ended up being more frustrating for him to fix issues from the code that ChatGPT created, that he just ended up,
Mhm.
he's learning coding on his own now to fix those problems. So
Mhm.
in a way, it's like that, it worked out in his favor because it got him into coding and he's doing it properly, and that's awesome. But it's just like it's sad that there's people at the professional levels that are now being forced to use chat gpt, and that's the coding is just going to get worse than somebody actually making it from scratch. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's also replacing art. It's also replacing movies. It's also replacing
Yep.
music. I think
Yep.
that's scary.
I agree.
Um, and as a result, we're losing soul. Like, when somebody makes a game, they're putting their soul into it. I mean, I say this with quotes because I don't like, I'm not so artsy fartsy that I believe like a song has a soul, but there is a human element to it that
Yeah.
if you have, like VO3 from Google generate the videos, and those things look crazy realistic. Like people can be fooled by that shit. I'm fooled by that shit.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you want a human that's making the story and filming it with their own ideas about angle and all this stuff, and not what just happened
Yep.
to come at that moment by the dumbass intern you played to do prompt engineering on the next Star Wars movie over the weekend to generate 20 movies and pick the best one to
Yep.
ship. Like you're losing out so much. And in that area too, like, will music education go away? Will art education go away? And these are my wife put the point pretty succinctly, like, because you have the anti naysayers are like, oh come on, the horse got replaced by the car, and what about all the people that were taking care of the horses? And come on, this other thing got replaced by this other thing, TV replaced whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, great, but this is the one time where something is literally replacing our minds.
Literally. Yep.
We're gonna, if for those of you who saw Wally, that future, these people became these kind of flat, these fat blobs
Yeah.
that were just kind of sucked to the TV screen, like just these sort of kind of dumb brain people.
Yeah.
Like that is the future of this. Like we're not gonna know how to create art, create music, or understand it. We're only limited to what AI is now creating, which it was
Mm-hmm.
only trained upon music that exists up until now.
Yep.
So you're not going to get anything new and innovative
Yep.
there.
Yep.
Also, there's legal issues with that because it's being trained on copyrighted content. Nobody's giving a shit about that.
Yep.
Um, So yeah, I'm pretty hotly against all this AI generative stuff, and I
Yeah,
refuse to use any of it at this
right.
point. There's a few uses where I somebody posts something on Facebook. It's like, all right, nobody would have ever done that. It's cool that that got created. Like, I don't know if you've seen some of these things, like um, insert movie name here, comma, but ruined by AI. Have you seen some
Yeah,
of
I've
those
seen those and
videos?
they're really cursed. Yeah, I've seen those
They're
before.
awesome. They're funny as hell, and it's like, all right,
Yeah,
that's not replacing anybody because nobody would ever do that. Nobody would
right,
ever
right.
like create some weird version of Mission Impossible with goofy stuff happening.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
cool to see what the AI is doing. So there's a few uses where I'm like, all right, you can get by that. But sort of doing the sort of meat and potatoes, nuts and bolts of what a lot of us would otherwise be doing, I'm pretty against because it's not going to do it well. We're going to lose the human aspect, and we're going to lose the knowledge of how to do it ourselves, which is
yeah.
the scariest part of me,
Agreed.
especially with software. Is the everything is just going to come crashing down in like 50 years when I'm dead and the next generation is dead and the one after that's dead and then nobody knows how to program because that
Yeah.
next generation didn't learn how to program. They put on their sunglasses like Dave Caruso and then just vibe coding, man. Don't harsh my mellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, generate me code that can totally be Twisted Metal 9, yo. You know?
Exactly. And like Bamberson makes a good point too. Like there are certain instances of generative AI or whatever where I feel like, yeah, that's never going to take anyone's job in this situation. Such as making a meme, like you're making a clear as day joke out of this. We
Mhm.
use this program called Tangia through my stream, which uses AI prompts to make like voices reply. Like I use characters from the games
Mhm.
like Calypso and stuff to reply to people. And in those instances, it's like, yeah, it's not taking anyone's job unless I guess the only thing I could think of is if I paid the voice actor who voiced him 20 years ago to be on my stream next to me to reply in that voice of everything that someone says. Like
Yeah.
that's the only where I'm like, it's for fun. It's not for, it's not, we're not calling it artwork. We're not selling it to people. It's just to be silly, whatever. I think in those instances, I'm
Yeah.
not going to crack down on somebody like Bamerson for making memes with AI because he's not selling it to somebody as his artwork or like,
Mhm.
I created this. Like, no, you didn't. You wrote a prompt and you're selling it as art, which is not art. So that's where I'm like,
Mhm.
I have to draw the line because you don't want to, you don't want to hurt artists their credibility. Because the other small little tangent I'll add to that is I have artist friends who I have to go to sometimes with a picture and be like, is this AI? Like, is this real? Is this AI? And they'll look at
Yeah.
it and they're like, no, actually, it's real. Like, this is a real thing. And I feel
Yeah.
bad for the artist who made that because it looks kind of AI-ish. You know what I'm saying? There's a weird like
Mhm.
filter sometimes to it. And it's
Yeah.
ruining a lot of credibility for those kind of artists because that's just how they've always made art their entire lives. And now all of a sudden AI kind of looks like their art. So, you know,
Mhm.
that's also kind of a very like gray area of where do you draw the line on like what's real and what's not kind of thing. But yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't want to derail the
There
whole stream. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that for coding purposes and stuff.
Oh, yeah. No, tons and tons of thoughts. I mean, for the imagery stuff, I think there is some tech out there that can detect it. I don't know how it does it, and I don't know how
Yeah.
reliable it is, but there is tech that can detect if something is AI generated.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, the scary thing is like, hey, um, I want you to generate me a, I don't know, whatever, some image of my family, but in the stylings of Dr. Seuss. Well, in order for it to do that, it had to have been trained on the styling of all of Dr. Seuss's artwork, which is, I
Yep.
believe, all copyrighted.
Yep.
Or if it's in the public domain, then at least there's some more modern artists that, like, in order for do the style of something, it had to have been trained on something that it probably wasn't allowed to be trained on. But yet,
Hmm.
the cat's out of the bag, though. Like, you're kind of screwed and there's
Agreed.
no way to sort of undo that. But the legalities are trying to unravel, like, all right, is there a way where we can figure out, like,
If
all
this
right,
was
we need to
generative
pay.
AI. Yeah.
Well, no, like, how do we figure out a royalty situation? Can we pay
Oh,
out the
right.
artist all these royalties?
Yeah.
Like, this guy gets 3 cents per use of something when it uses these terms, or so. I don't know.
Sure.
Like, I
Sure.
wouldn't even begin to know how that can be unraveled, but there that might be something that's coming, but I don't know. Maybe because it's such an impossible thing that maybe it'll be pushed back. Like, look, sorry.
Yeah.
can't do it. I don't know.
I would think in that realm it'd be easier just to have some type of metadata that would tell if something's AI and they could put a law on it. You know, if this was used copyrighted material to create this image, then you could get sued for that, you know, copyrighted or whatever.
Yeah,
I think that'd be
yeah,
easier to do than to like do the royalty route. But I think the royalty route would be that'd be the best, because then if somebody was having their artwork used to create this AI image, they could at least get money for it, I suppose. But
yeah,
yeah, I just don't know that'd be possible, sadly.
yeah, yeah. No idea.
But baby. But hey, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run to the restroom real quick. But if you want to check out the chat, if anybody has any last minute questions for Jim before we head out, this is the perfect time to do it. And I'm gonna be right back.
Okay, cool, cool. Scrolling through the chat here. I remember somebody had asked Ancient Idol. This is a more technical question. I hope I'm not boring anyone with it, but could you ask Jim Buck about his experience developing for PS1 back in 98, 99? Was it fun and frustrating? It was fun. It was definitely fun. Figuring out how to get, new tech working on these platforms. Now you have game engines that do it all for you, but we were making the game engines back then and trying to get it to work on a very underpowered platform, while shipping a game in a reasonable time manner. That was pretty fun. I mean, it was frustrating in that there was a lot of crunching. Um, that's never great. But I would say it was far, 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 far more fun than it was frustrating. Now it's probably the opposite. It's frustrating trying to work with some game engines, trying to figure out how do I do this very specific thing I want to do in this game engine, that it wasn't necessarily designed for. So it ends up sort of being less fun and more frustrating. Sometimes you have to kind of push the engine beyond its limits. Sometimes you have to modify the engine, um, just stuff like that.
All right, I'm back. Sorry
Um,
about that.
oh, no
Holding that for
problem,
so
man.
long.
I'm about to hit that too. So
Let's see.
I answered a question up above about if it was fun in 98, 99 working on PS1 or frustrating, from Ancient Idol.
Okay.
But I could probably do one more question, then I should skedaddle.
Yeah, I'm trying to find one that's pretty interesting, one we haven't really answered already.
What projects am I working on at the moment?
Oh, that's a good one. If you don't mind bringing that up.
Yeah, I'm in a little bit of a weird transition. I left my job 15 months ago to do some indie stuff again. Indie market is, or the sort of contracting market has dramatically changed since I got out of it in 2016. But I also thought since Twisted Metal's a TV show, maybe now's the time to do a car combat game. So last year I did a short-term war game contract using Unreal Engine 5. It was like maybe just a few weeks. I helped a friend out with some early R&D on some tech she was doing. I didn't get too much headway on that. And then I'm working with Kevin Bunting on a car combat game. He's working in Unreal Engine 5. I'm working on tech from scratch. But in the meantime, I'm also doing like if I come across some jobs that, like I kind of want to get more back into creative industry. Taking a side detour, getting into autonomous drones and autonomous cars, and working for visualization teams like the game engine team for that. I kind of want to get back into more creative roles. So I've been looking at sort of doing like games or movies, or working for companies that create tools for making those things, like Adobe. They have like 3D tools. Also, I do professional musician stuff. So I do a lot of gigging and getting gigs together and get paid for that. It's not much, but just sort of trying to treat it as a professional hobby thing. And I guess that's about it for now. We'll see if I make any headway on the car combat game, but that would be pretty cool.
And you know that
So,
I'll be
yeah,
definitely waiting for that and very excited to see any things that come about it.
totally, yeah.
But
Yeah,
all right,
it'll be fun.
I think we're good there, because a lot of the questions I saw were stuff we actually answered at the beginning of the stream. If you guys missed any of the questions, by all means, check out the VOD. It'll always be available if you missed anything from any of the any of the questions that we asked Jim earlier. Mox says, shout out to Jim. Backbreaking Buck for this last time.
Oh man.
Thanks for the awesome stream. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. And again, round of applause for Jim. Thank you for showing up and for hanging out with us and answering our questions. It's been an awesome honor. And if you guys aren't already following his YouTube channel, exclamation Jim in the chat. Click on the link there, give him a sub. And yeah, it sounds like in the near future, maybe he might be adding some more videos there. So definitely check him out when he does.
Yeah. All right, cool. Take care, man. Good chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for
Yep.
being here, dude.
Yep. Yep. Take care. Yep, you too. Bye.
And with that, we're going to be heading out, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. All the love to Jim and all the love to you guys. And yeah, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Happy Sunday. And hope to see you all on Monday when we get back to it. Much love, everybody. Peace.